Good morning, everyone. Please remain standing for prayers by my chaplain, Canon Brian Pippin, before we start the meeting.
Let us pray. As well as praying for ourselves today, we want to remember South Africa, particularly as the memorial service is going on today with representation from the leaders of the world. And also we want to pray for the departed, particularly those who have died tragically in our borough. So just to begin the service, we think of Dennis Drew, a former head of Hollybush and Llanarafon, who died in a motor accident in Pontier. And of course, in our hearts and minds, we remember Nelson Mandela. So can we spend a few moments in quiet reflection, commending them to Almighty God, and then I will say appropriate prayers. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayers. So we pray for South Africa with prayers of thanksgiving for the life of Nelson Mandela. Almighty God, as we gather today, our thoughts and our prayers go to you for South Africa, as that nation, with all the nations of the world, mourn and celebrate the life of Nelson Mandela. Help the nations of the world and all who serve them that the greatest weapons in the cause of peace is love. And in that love, a seeking and a working for peace, justice and reconciliation. And after the example of your Son, Jesus Christ, and in our time, that example of Nelson Mandela, the earnest offering and accepting of forgiveness. We ask that your Holy Spirit will keep alive in the hearts of all people that spirit of determination to achieve what is right, especially in the face of suffering. May South Africa be blessed with the beauty of peace in the spirit of Nelson Mandela, and may we, in our time and place, have the courage to follow his example. We ask all this in your name, O God, our Father. Amen. Amen. Be with us today, O Lord, as we deliberate and debate in this chamber the issues that affect this borough, and bless us with your wisdom. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Please be seated. I'd like to remind you all that the council meeting is being broadcasted live over the internet, so we're all on camera. Be aware that you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. There is no need for members to stand up. Jeff?
You still after my head, Mayor?
Remember to speak clearly into the mic. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting today, councillors, officers, members of the press and public, the representatives of Gwent Police and the Care and Social Service Inspectorate for Wales. Anyone watching the meeting via the webcast now or later, wherever you are. Please can all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there is an emergency alarm, follow the green signs and go to the ground floor in the Civic car park. If we have any motions or amendments during the meeting, I will need them to be clear, please, before we go to the vote. Agenda item 1, attendance. The attendance register is going around the room. Please can all members sign and send it on. Agenda item 2, apologies. Lead officer, council and members support Richard Gwinnell. Have you had any apologies?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. We have apologies from Councillor Gwynaira Clark, Councillor Alan Jones, Councillor Veronica Crick, Councillor Len Constance and Councillor Keith James.
Thank you, Richard.
Additional to
Members,
that,
any other?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Neil Wheat sends his apologies. Thank you.
Anybody else, members?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Glyn Cadden.
And Councillor Jessica Powell.
Thank you. I think that's everybody. Agenda item 3, members' interest. Monitor Officer Linda Willis, do you have any advice for members, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not aware that there are any interests, but members will know if any interests become apparent as we proceed through the meeting, then of course they can declare at that point. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Linda. Members, do you have any interests? No. Can you make sure your any interests are also written on the normal form, please? Agenda item 4, minutes, 22nd of October 2013. Can someone move the minutes are correct? No. Are we all agreed? Thank you, members. The minutes are agreed. Agenda item 5, update on actions. Members, the update on what has been done to implement our previous decisions start on page 30 of the agenda. Peter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have an update on page 34, the meeting of the 22nd of October, our last meeting, 11.9. The Auditor General, having received the Council's response to his improvement assessment letter, has decided that the statutory recommendation is appropriate and should remain unchanged. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Brian Mulvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, can I apologise for the jumper I'm wearing? I know it's horrible, but it is in what I believe to be a good cause. The Education Department had a Christmas jumper day last Friday, and I was unable to participate because I was elsewhere. Christmas jumper day was in aid of the Hibs Lupus Society, and in respect of in memory of Rhys Parker, the husband of one of the members of staff in the Education Department who sadly died a few months ago. And donations were collected on Friday, and I'm pleased to say roughly £300 were collected for the Hibs Lupus Society. So that's very good. And I'll be collecting contributions later. Having made my apologies for my appearance, I would like to say in relation to page 30, 25th of June, item 1216, Roman numeral 6, the action there in relation to the Hill Review about the arrangement for delivery of education services in future, that there have been various discussions, informal and formal, regarding this particular topic. Most recently, the leader attended a meeting with the Minister for Education, together with other leaders in the Gwent area, to discuss the delivery of services in future. At that meeting and subsequently, I think it was made clear that the way in which we organise services in future will depend very much on what emerges from the Williams Commission. So I think action has been taken, and we do need really to have that updated accordingly on the action sheet. But there will be further consideration to the topic, obviously, in light of the Williams Commission report when that comes out, we expect in January. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Agenda item 6, consultation monitor. Members, the consultation monitor starts on page 35. Leader, do you wish to comment?
A version of the consultation monitor is reproduced in the council agenda, indicating the topics of the consultation, who is undertaking it, who will respond on behalf of the council, and the deadline for response. One of the key items on the monitor is the consultation relating to the development of the M4 south of Newport. Members will know our response to this consultation has been scheduled for a discussion as part of a meeting. I look forward to the debate and submitting the council's view ahead of the deadline on the 16th of December.
Thank you, Leader. Members, any comments? No. Is everyone happy to note the consultation monitor? Yeah. Thank you, members. That is noted. Yeah, sir.
When do we get a chance to debate that, please?
It's being scheduled, Peter. One of your last
Later in the meeting, Stuart. It's on the agenda. Okay. Thank you. Agenda item 7, petitions. We have one petition today. Councillor Giles Davis, can you read it out and bring it to me, please?
Mr Mayor, please accept this petition as part of the consultation on the name change for Vartig. 99.9% of residents who live in the village of Vartig, including those who have children at the local Welsh school, are totally opposed to the suggestion to use the name Vartig.
Thank you, Judge.
Point of order. Point of order.
Point of order. Yeah. Who said that? Councillor Rees?
Yeah. The lead officer, council and member support sent out an email on Friday with the text of the petition, which is my understanding of what should be presented to the council. So I was wondering, as the consultation deadline was yesterday, whether it's appropriate for it to be considered as part of the consultation, and also wouldn't it be more appropriate to read out what the people actually signed their petition for?
Right. Richard?
In respect of the wording, I've got no comment. The lead officer has sent that out. In respect to accepting the petition, this is a formal process as the wishes of the member for the ward wanted it brought to council. The members of the ward have kindly given me the petition earlier in the week, and as the deadline was yesterday, I've accepted the petition as part of the consultation. This is a formal, today is their formal voice of bringing it to the council. In terms of the consultation process, I accepted the petition earlier in the week. Well, yesterday, I can't get earlier than that, on a Monday, sorry. So it is in line with the consultation deadline.
Thank you, Rich. Jeff, I think you should read the... Oh, Giles, I think you need to come up and read the full concept of the letter, please. All right with that, Jeff?
I'm happy to follow your advice, Mayor, as always.
We, the undersigned, are aware and concerned of the proposed consultation within the community regarding the reintroduction of the Welsh name Fardig or Fardig for Vartig. While supportive of the Welsh language generally, in this particular instance, we consider that after many years of the Welsh spelling not being used for this place name, it has been redundant locally, and its reintroduction presents an unfortunate and unnecessary opportunity for immature ridicule of the place name and represents a risk of potential unnecessary replacement costs from the defacing of the local highway and other community signage.
Thank you, Giles. The petition contains 117 signatures. Are we all happy to refer it to the Executive Member for Health and Social Care, Wellbeing and Equalities? Yep. Yes, Richard.
As already been alluded to by Councillor Rees, there was a consultation process. This was the first executive decision I had to make with my equalities hat on, and I thought it fair and appropriate that the actual residents of the area have their say in it, rather than me just sit in a room and sign off willy-nilly a decision. As a result, the consultation process has taken place. Once the Welsh language officer has finished his duties here, translating anybody who wishes to speak through the medium of Welsh, he will analyse those results. A report will be made to myself, and I will let members know of the decision thereafter. And obviously then it will be picked up in the minutes. So I accept the petition, and I'll let you know the results accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Agenda item 8, public question time. We have one public question for today's meeting, shown on the sheet circulated around the room. Francis Kendall, can you come to the front and ask your question, please?
Good morning. In a letter of the 12th of November 2013 to an Assembly member, the Minister of Education indicates the clarification is being sought by his officials on Torfaen's current submission in regards to funding to the new Ysgol Panteg school. Has the Council provided the necessary clarification to date?
Thank you. Councillor Brian Morby, Executive Member for Children and Young People. Can you reply, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. The outline business case for Ysgol Panteg Llantarnam Community Primary and Blenheim Road Community Primary Schools was submitted to the Welsh Government in April 2013. Since then, Welsh Government has been processing the detail of the business cases, and we have been answering their questions relating to the various sections of the documents. For the most part, the questions have been in relation to the capacity of each school, of each of those schools compared with the projected demand for places in each, the quality of the education being provided, other options that are being considered, and the management of surplus places. Our last response to Welsh Government was in October, and we understand that a decision on the outline business case will be provided soon.
Thank you, Brian. Mrs Kendall, have you got a supplementary question?
In Councillor Mowbray's response to the public question on the 22nd of October, he stated, and I quote, "Welsh Government has not released the funding for the new school, and if this position does not change in the next few months, we will have to make contingency plans for 2015, end quote. Please can Councillor Mowbray clarify who will be to blame for the new school if it's not ready for September 2015? The Education Minister, Hugh Lewis, or Torfaen's Cabinet Member for Children and Young People?
Thank you. Brian?
Yes, thanks for that. The situation with regard to blame, I don't think, is an appropriate one to respond to at this stage. Clearly, we're anxious to have a response from the Welsh Government, but clearly the Welsh Government Minister and ourselves are responsible for spending public money, and we need to do so in a manner which actually ensures that we spend it wisely. So I can understand why the Welsh Government would have questions relating to the business case, to thoroughly scrutinise that and to check that it is the right sort of investment. I'm confident that they will see that it is appropriate and that decision will be made in good time to enable the proposal to go ahead for September 2015. When I was asked about that question in October, I did make it clear that if there were problems, we would be looking at potentially temporary short-term solutions early in 2014, following the closing date of the reception admissions round, when there should be more accurate numbers for September 2014 and for in anticipation of the new school. So those will be looked at early in the new year, and I'm hopeful by then that we will have had a response from Welsh Government. If not, we will continue to press. But I'm still confident that the new arrangements will be in place in good time.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Scanlon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 9, announcements. Leader, do you have any announcements?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to stand for this. I want to make a couple of announcements. The first one is I want to say some things about Nelson Mandela. Can I inform the Council that back in the 60s and 70s, there was a very strong anti-apartheid movement in Torfaen itself. I just recapped on some of the people who were present, people like Doug MacLeod, people like Neil Balgobin, Dr. Danny Mahaja, and people like Ken Holmes, who was a member of this council. And to demonstrate against the Springboks took a lot of courage, because obviously the soccer and the rugby people weren't keen on, indeed the cricket, weren't keen on that. However, that happened and Mandela was given his freedom. And then he was given the freedom of Cardiff, the fifth man to be given the freedom of Cardiff. And when he was given his freedom, he described the Welsh as his friend. The Welsh people, he said, are my friends. He also said, I will be able to tell my people that the people of Wales are my friends. And those of us that were engaged in those marches were very pleased about that. About 12 years ago, I think about 12 years ago, I went to South Africa, and I went to Robben Island, and I went to the yard that he was kept in, and I went inside his cell, and I sat on his cell. And it was amazing. And for somebody to spend 27 years in, 18 in that one, but 27 years in total, in a cell like that, and to come out and not be very bitter and very nasty, is quite amazing. And that's been recorded in all the praises that have been given to him over the last couple of days. So, what I want to do, with the permission of the Council, is to send a letter to the South African Embassy. Members can sign if they wish. If they don't want to, that's entirely up to them. But this is the letter, and it's... we wanted to write to offer our sincere condolence to the people of South Africa on the death of Nelson Mandela, to follow our decision to fly our flag at half-mast on Friday in his memory. We are a council representing communities in the South Wales valleys of the UK, and Nelson Mandela was for many years and will continue to be a great inspiration to many of us. Many of us took part in the anti-apartheid movement that sought to give moral support to Mandela and others imprisoned and persecuted by the apartheid regime. And it was therefore with great joy that we saw him visit South Wales in 1998. As the President of the New South Africa, his warmth and his humility on that occasion was striking and mirrors many stories told in the past few days by people fortunate enough to have worked with him or to have simply met him. We therefore share your grief at his loss and give thanks on behalf of our community for all that he did in his life to overcome injustice and equality. This letter will be available for any member to sign if they wish. I want to finish with one little comment by his great friend Desmond Tutu, the Reverend Desmond Tutu. And he says, how blessed are we? He has become the most admired statesman in the world. an icon of forgiveness and reconciliation. And this is a beauty, a moral colossus. Wonderful man, wonderful gift to us all. That's by his best friend, Desmond Tutu. I'm going to sign this, and then members can sign it, and it'll probably be with Nancy, and you can sign it if you wish. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Well put. Chief Executive, do you have any announcements?
I apologise. I need to do another announcement, if I can find it. Here it is. And it's about our good friend, Peter Durkin, who's about to leave us after 24 years of working for the council and working for individuals as well as the leadership and various other people. So I'm certain that all members, past and present, will wish to join me in paying tribute to Peter Durkin, a most exceptional officer who has worked hard for Torfaen and whose principal qualities of loyalty and reliability has earned him a reputation across the council and further afield. I think the first thing to say about Peter is that he's a man for all seasons. Whatever the problem, whatever the challenge, you can call on Peter to give you the benefit of his cool judgment. I've taken all kinds of discussions to Peter, and he's not once blanched on anything that I've asked him. He never says, "This is not my field. You need a specialist to advise you on this or that. That's not my gift." He listens, and it seems there is no problem too big or too small that cannot be worked out. By keeping calm, sifting the facts and deciding on a way forward. This is precisely the approach that members want from an officer, because most of our work is about people, and that requires compassion, skill, practice, patience, and intuition. Peter possessed all those. I could pick any member from this chamber, and I'll bet each would have a different story about Peter. Peter can quickly understand where you need to be, and he does his best to get you there as quickly as possible. It could be a parking problem in your ward, it could be a right-of-way, it could be a community group in need of guidance. There is nothing that Peter will not take seriously if it matters to you. Officers regard Peter in a similar way. Peter is that rare individual, that critical friend, someone who enjoys what they do and wants to help you and see if he can solve your problems. The council must be effective, must enjoy a positive reputation, whose soul is preserved and assured. Cast your mind back, some of you, I don't think it's many years, but I know I'm here. I know John Cunningham is here, and there's probably a couple more. Cast your mind back some 24 years to a young and enthusiastic personnel officer who made his way up from Malcolms Road to Cwmbran, through Cwmbran Drive, arriving at the council offices, and somebody who wrote this has written it wrong because we weren't here in Pontypool, we were actually in the town centre in Cwmbran on the 5th floor. It was while they were building this that Peter was interviewed, and we were down there on a temporary basis. So Newport's loss has been Torfaen's gain, and I think I know how our colleagues in Goffrey Road must have felt, though I doubt that the scale of their loss was appreciated at the time. Peter went on to lead the council's Human Resources Department, creating a culture in which hard work and endeavour is rewarded and slackening is never an option. He and I could dine out on tales of power and politics by individuals of passion and vision he has encountered during his times in Torfaen, and I know that Peter would look back on his career in Torfaen with fondness and amusement. He did say he's not going to show his face here again. Let's not forget that Peter served 2 lengthy spells as acting chief executive. Peter never hesitated when asked to step up and work with his customary enthusiasm. No tribute to Peter could be complete without reference to his weekly director's blog, possibly the most eagerly awaited event in the start of a working week. Many hunger for a personal mention. If they do so, they take on the status of a celebrity of the week. Peter's blog is always engaging. I think there's more to it, and despite its popular pitch, the blog contains a highly professional core brief of the council's activities and inspirations. This is shrewd work and encourages those not disposed to ploughing through the council or cabinet agenda to engage with what Torfaen is all about. I'd recommend that to some of the people who are critics, actually. If you read Peter's blog, see it religiously, you can probably defend the council against taproom critics. You're informed enough to rebuke criticism, explain policy and trumpet achievements in a fairly basic level. A level that most people can grasp. These are unique talents. Personally, I'm very sorry that Peter is leaving us. I will miss Peter's support, reassurance, judgment and optimism. I wish him and Miriam every good fortune for the future, and I invite members to stand and put your hands together for Peter. No, we're going to present Peter with this, and you can see it's some tumblers and a whiskey container, some decanter. I wish I had a bread. What we tell him also is if he has it, he needs to not visit it too often. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me say a few words, Mr. Mayor. I'm overwhelmed by that speech. Thank you, Leader. People keep coming up to me and saying, you'll be a great loss. And for the past couple of months, I've been trying to get out quickly while they still hold that view. Because it can go downhill at any time, and it may subsequently go downhill at this meeting yet. 24 years in Torfaen. And as the leader said, I can remember that day, February 1990, I think it was, where I delivered the application form to get the job here in HR. And I was hugely pleased to get it. And I recognised from the start that there was a difference between Newport and Torfaen. There was a warmth here, there was a humour that has been here from the start to the finish. I'm going to miss colleagues hugely. I'm going to miss councillors hugely. And I'm also going to miss the people of Torfaen. I've had the privilege to meet so many people. And they, as you, have always, well, almost always, shown that warmth and humour. And here we are today being webcast, and I'm able to say thank you to the people of Torfaen as well. I can honestly say it's been a fresh challenge every day. I've never been bored here. In terms of the decision to go, I think those who know me know that I like to be on the front foot. I like to be proactive. I like to make my own decisions. And I've been in local government for 42 years. I think it's a question of going while you're at great loss before people tell you to get lost. So that's it. I want to go where I'm at least still on the up. There are too many people for me to thank. I obviously thank the leader for that speech, and I know he makes it on behalf of many people. And I also want to express my thanks to many people, but there are too many to thank. And of course, some of them are no longer here. They've gone on to pastures new, and sadly, some of them are no longer even with us. So to everyone I've been associated with, worked with in Torfaen, I say thank you. Thank you for a great career. And I wish you every best wish for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, Leader, and everybody else. Chief Executive, any announcements?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There'll be lots of opportunities for staff to say goodbye to Peter in our own way, and so I'm not going to try and top what the leader said. I couldn't possibly top it, but I just want to say that later on in the agenda there is a report which is about the administrative arrangements for replacing Peter's duties, and obviously that's a necessary thing to do. But from his colleagues, I would like to say that as a colleague and a friend and as a human being, he's irreplaceable as far as we're concerned. So I just wanted to say that because we're going to get into some administrative detail later on, but that doesn't take away from what Peter's brought to this organisation as a person. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Agenda item 10, Social Care Performance Report. Keith Rutherford, Deputy Director of Social Care and Housing, can you introduce the report for us, please, and then hand it over to our CSSIW colleagues.
Good morning, members. You'll recall that earlier in the year, the Director brought her annual report, which is a statutory requirement and for you to debate. And that report is then also forwarded on to our colleagues in the Care and Social Services Inspectorate for them to comment on. The report you have before you today is based on that report and an engagement meeting we've had with them to discuss this. So I won't go through the report in any detail now because my colleague Margaret Rooney from the Inspectorate will do a short presentation which covers the issues contained within that report. I will of course take any questions after if members have any.
Thank you.
Margaret Rooney.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you for inviting us here today to talk to you about our report, the Annual Council Reporting Framework. I hope you bear with me and allow me to go through, just in brief, to start the process that we go through to produce the report. The report's an annual report, and bear in mind that it's a report that focuses on 2012-13, although we're now in December 2013. The methodology to produce the report is based on a collection of evidence that we use, including, as Keith has pointed out, the Director's report, the two reports that sit under that report from the heads of Children's Services and the head of Adult Services. We also draw into our intelligence information that we will have collected via visits that we'll have done to various services throughout the year, any thematic reviews that CSIW may have undertaken, and our engagement meetings with the officers throughout the year. We draw that together, we produce the report. We did have an engagement meeting with officers following our first draft, where the officers were given an opportunity to comment, and following that we produced the final published report. Okay, so I think it's fair to say that the report in general is a relatively positive report with no major failings being identified. So I'm going to bring you through the summary and some of the key sort of areas of progress and areas of development needed throughout the next year. One of the things that stands out when you work with Torvine, and it has a strong history of, is partnership working. The Council seeks and takes opportunities to work in partnership with neighbouring authorities, partners, and some of the things that jump out in my mind when I talk about partnership work in Torvine is Gwent Frailty, supporting people, the adoption service, just to name but a few. And that's an important thing for the Council in order to achieve some of its aims that it sets out in its single integrated plan. We couldn't ignore the fact that there are pressures financially, and the Director's report did comment on that and set out that some of the improvement plans that you might have liked to have taken forward, and some of the development plans you would have liked to take forward to achieve your visions as set out in your single integrated plan, have been limited. The opportunity to do that has been limited due to those pressures, and that does create some challenges around moving services forward to meet future needs. So we know that demand is increasing. Demand will continue to increase at pace. So those challenges are how you continue with those improvements and shape services at a pace needed to meet the demand as it increases over time and to create sustainable services into the future. Obviously, during 2012-13, we couldn't ignore the fact that there was substantial relocation of teams from the Council offices. And that brought with it some challenges. However, it did bring some opportunities in terms of restructuring of teams and restructuring how teams, new ways of working, which have created some opportunities. And from my visits to some of the teams, I can see some of that is starting to pay dividends. The establishment of the Specialist Commissioning Unit, we see that as a positive and helping the Council to achieve some of its visions, because the Commissioning Unit plays an important part in, number one, not just monitoring and evaluating contracts and making sure that providers are delivering what it is that they're contracted to deliver, but also taking a strategic approach to commissioning, using data intelligence and mapping out need and what services are needed into the future, so helping to shape services into the future. So that's sort of a whistle-stop tour of the summary. In terms of some of the risks, you won't be surprised to see that, like many other councils, severe budgetary pressures, coupled with that increasing demand which picks up over time, is a risk for this council and many other councils. And that creates a problem in terms of investment of resources into reshaping services to deliver what it is that you want to deliver and need to deliver. And what I'm talking about there is within your single integrated plan, I think, which articulates very clearly what the vision for the future is about what outcomes that the Local Service Board would like to achieve for citizens in terms of protecting vulnerable people and frail people being able to live independently. To achieve some of those things, the plan sets out things like increasing on prevention, community resilience and assets, and that requires reshaping services. And that's quite difficult to do, and it means that you have got some difficult decisions to make sometimes about where you position your resources. One of the other risks that we identified was in terms of implementing the new regional and national adoption structures within the current budget constraints. So at the moment you've got an adoption service which covers 3 boroughs. That will soon move to the 5 Gwent authorities, and then with the national over the body coming in as part of the bill. Doing that within existing budgets could be a risk. This final one, I have to say that I know there has been some movement on this since we wrote the report. This is one of the disadvantages of having to come at this time of the year. So do bear in mind, and we recognise that sometimes things have moved on since we've written the report. At the time of writing of the report, there was some ambiguity around what was going to happen with children with disabilities teams who had been relocated with the Newport team down at the Surrounding Centre. I visited the centre myself, which has absolutely, and I hope that some of you have had the opportunity to visit it. It's got excellent facilities there. But there was some ambiguity about what the future was in terms of full integration, remaining as co-located teams. And I do believe that some further options appraisal has been carried out since that time, and some decisions have been made about that moving forward. We identified some good practice when we were pulling the information together. And one of the pieces of good practice which stood out to us was this multidisciplinary intervention service, Torvine, which is always referred to as MIST. I believe that originally that service was developed in, really to reduce the number of placements for children outside of county. I think now, as that's developed, it might have broadened its remit slightly. But when we talk to people who have used the service and social workers, it's really seen as an asset in the borough, and the evaluation of the service has demonstrated that not only has it reduced the costs of placements, it's also produced some really good outcomes for the children and families that are using the services. So it's something that stood out to us as an item of good practice. Moving back to that vision about promoting independence, the low-level preventing project, we saw that as a good practice item because that is something that's moving you towards your ambition of building that community resilience. So this befriending project is operated via hubs, via several locations across the borough, and we think it's something to be encouraged and to be developed over time. One of the things that stood out to us for children, looked after children, was the education results for 16-year-olds, which had improved and were above the Wales average. And also, we felt that the schools-based coordinator was helping to improve outcomes for children, looked after children. One example of that was exclusions, which had been reduced by 50%. I myself attended a corporate parenting group in Torvine recently and saw some good constructive challenge of officers about outcomes for children. So even though the outcomes for children in Torvine are good and they are, compare well across Wales, officers were being challenged, and I thought very appropriately, I was encouraged to see it being challenged about, well, let's have expectations for these young people which mirror what we would expect for our own children and not have lower expectations just because they looked after children. So I thought that was to be commended. Within our report, we focus on 6 areas, and the first area is about how the extent to which the Council shapes services. And in terms of area of progress there, we thought that the development of the dedicated commissioning unit is definitely progress, and it helps in terms of, as I said before, bringing that information together and commissioning, maybe commissioning differently and different types of services in the future that help shape services the way you need them to be. The development, the co-location of the teams in Sereno Centre, we thought that was definitely an area of progress because although there were some challenges in terms of, and some maybe concerns about families who live maybe in the northern half of the borough in terms of distance, we could see there was excellent facilities there, and the social workers we spoke to felt that families were benefiting from that arrangement. This area of improvement in terms of more prevention and early intervention, we recognise that the Council has had some difficult decisions to take in terms of balancing priorities. And it goes back to that risk around financial pressures, trying to reshape your services so that rather than being reactive services, they are preventative services and preventing people from moving up to need those more higher intensive types of interventions, both in children's and in adults. This particular one refers to children's. We understand there was a difficult decision had to be made in terms of the Enabling Families project. That was a decision that had to be made in terms of balancing budgets and priorities between education and social services. And we think that might continue to be a challenge into the future. But prevention and early intervention will be key in order to keep children out from needing those more complex and more expensive services. When we talk about getting help, we're talking about the amount of information that the citizens have about what services are available and how they can access those services, and also the ease with which they can access those services. There's lots of information available in Torvine via the website, leaflets, posters, etc. My friend here who lives in Torvine delivers me what's it called again, Sue? Torvine Talks every time it comes out, so I can have a read of it because I don't live in Torvine myself. But there's good information available. And one of the areas of progress that we noted was that there was a redesign of the information for carers that had been designed during the year. There's also some specific information for people with specific needs. For example, there's a newsletter for children with disabilities and their families. So we do think there's good quality information available for people about services. In terms of accessing services, the duty pod arrangements in adults, that's where people can phone in and get access to a qualified person who can give them advice up front about what needs to happen. And we feel that is helping in terms of improving the timeliness of decision-making and assessments at that first point of contact, and making sure that contacts that do come in and go on to be a full assessment are appropriate to go on to a full assessment. Obviously, we couldn't not mention the reablement services that have been delivered via the Gwent Frailty model in the community resource team. That's showing that it's having an impact in terms of delayed transfers of care. What that refers to is reablement services are doing a good job in trying to keep people independent for longer. I myself visited some people recently. That was this year, but I have visited some people receiving those services, spoke to them about their experiences, and the feedback I got was really heartening and very, very positive. That, in terms of performance indicators, it's showing that it's having an impact in terms of the delayed transfers, i.e. less people are experiencing a delay in transferring from hospital back into their community or wherever it is that they need to go. And we think that reablement services are helping to achieve that. In terms of an area of improvement in getting help, the PIs in children's services are satisfactory, but one in particular which is poor is about that placement plans for children who are brought into care, that PI is quite low, and we think it's something that's important. It's important at that early stage to be planning for the future, the long-term planning, what's going to happen to these children who've been brought into the care system. And that might be something that councillors might want to assure themselves. Now, officers inform us that some of these PIs, some of the issues with them is in terms of reporting, systems, it's more that issue, and that may be so. You'll want to assure yourself that is the case and that there is appropriate planning, permanency planning for children when they come into care at the earliest opportunity. The next area that we look at is the actual services that are provided. How comprehensive are there? Are people getting the services that they need? In terms of various progress here, we recognise that there was improvements in the timeliness of assessments and the delivery of the disabled facilities grants. That is, people having adjustments made in their homes. However, the figure for the time that people have to wait is still quite high. I think it's 360 something, but it had reduced by 58 days, which is something to be, that is definitely an improvement. So we put it as an improvement. However, that wait is quite a long wait. And when you think about these, the adjustments being made, they're vital in terms of helping people to remain independent. So it would be something that we would want, you would want to look at and try and get those in as quickly as possible. We've quoted the MIST project again here as an area of progress, because it is an area of progress. It is delivering good services to children and families with those more complex needs. And the area for improvement is the care planning and permanency. We undertook inspections of the fostering service and the adoption service. In the adoption service, which is the three-borough county adoption service, we found it was a good service, delivering good outcomes. We didn't find any areas for improvement there. Within the fostering service, we got very good feedback from foster carers about the support that they were receiving from social workers. However, we did identify some areas for improvement around reviews and around information given to foster carers about the needs of children. And I understand that the Social Service Department have been working on putting those improvements into place. We'll be going out to inspect again. It's an annual process, and we're hoping to find some improvements there. But that area of improvement was around that sort of coupled with the previous thing I talked about in terms of permanency planning. And I understand there were some difficulties in the fostering service in terms of resource, and we're hoping that may have improved since then. So this bit here is about the so what question. We can talk all we like about shaping services and what's there, but actually what impact does it have on people's lives? And that's something that we at the CSIW are very concerned with, and we concentrate a lot on. We noted that in adult services, the reviews of care plans, the percentage of reviews of care plans has improved, and that's a good thing. Now, you might think that that's a performance indicator, it's just a figure, it's a tick in the box, but it is important because having timely reviews enables social services to make sure that the services being delivered are the services that are needed. In some cases, that could be that somebody's changing needs means they need more service, whereas in other cases, it could actually mean that they need less services. So we noted an improvement in the reviews. It's all to do with this thing that people call right-sizing packages, to make sure people are getting the right amount of service for what they need at that time. The new commissioning unit is ensuring that contract monitoring, there's improvements made in contract, there's a focus on contract monitoring and making sure that providers are delivering good quality outcomes and what it is that they've been contracted to deliver, and holding them to account. I've also noticed there's good relationships between the contract monitoring team, the commissioning team and other partners, and also with CSIW. We work well together where there are concerns about providers, because CSIW also inspect providers as part of our regulatory work. And more recently, we had some good joint working in terms of some home closures. Significant reductions in school exclusions for looked after children. Certainly that 50% reduction is definitely to be welcomed. In terms of areas for improvement, this first one we talk about marketing and the uptake of direct payments. There has been progress in direct payments, and we did see some slow progress. And that helps people to have choice and to increase their independence. And we thought it was something that you might want to market more and to sort of encourage people to the uptake of direct payments. We understand that there are high numbers of looked after children, and we know that the officers have done a lot of work on looking at those numbers and making sure that every child that's brought into care, it's appropriate that they're brought into care, and that care orders are revoked when they need to be revoked, etc. But again, we do think it's worth mentioning that the Council needs to continue to look at and concentrate on those high numbers of looked after children, and making sure there's sufficient capacity to revoke orders where that's appropriate. We've spoke to officers about this, and they are confident that there are no orders that should be revoked, and they're constantly reviewing that. And I know that the head of Children's Services, every time I see her, she knows exactly how many children are looked after, and she's very focused on that number and getting that number down. In terms of capacity, one of the things that stood out to us and stands out in Torvine is the commitment to training and development and staff. Lots of staff, they seem to like working in Torvine, and that sort of mirrors some of the comments made earlier on about being quite a warm environment to work in. And one of the things that in 2012-13 that officers did, which we thought was very good, was an engagement process with staff where it was a large scale operation where they asked staff for their views on service development, etc. And we thought that was something that was really positive in bringing staff along. We know that officers have been looking closely at high sickness levels, and some of the sickness levels may well have been exacerbated by maybe restructure, the movements, but we understand that that's starting to stabilise now. Areas for improvement. The Director informed us that training had decreased slightly during 2012-13 because there had been some shortages of trainers for specialist programmes. So that's where that area for improvement comes from there in relation to that. And the final bit that we look at is providing direction. One of the things that we have noted this year is that there has been evidence of increased challenge, interest and support from scrutiny and members for officers. We think that's to be commended. When we go to scrutiny ourselves, we see that. I've seen it myself in the corporate parenting group, and that can only be a good thing. And finally, the area for improvement in providing directions is in relation to the WAO recommendation about internal evaluation and audit, about quality assurance and performance measures. I know that we have conversations with officers about performance measures every time we meet them in engagement meetings, because we go through PIs. And I know there is that balance between getting the job done and making, you want social workers to be out there delivering services, and there's a balance between that and being in filling in forms. What we need to make sure is that this is not just about ticking boxes, it's making sure that information is recorded in a way that can be, if that social worker doesn't turn up tomorrow, somebody else knows what's happening with that child or that elderly person. So that's a whistle-stop tour. I hope I haven't taken too much time. And I'm happy to take questions, or I may have to ask my colleague to help out if I'm not sure of answers. Anyone would like to ask any questions?
Thank you, Margaret. We'll start with Lewis and Mary.
Thank you for a very thorough and fair review. Your remarks about the DFGs, certainly shared by a lot of our members here. We haven't got a very good history with the DFGs, but from your experience working with other authorities throughout Wales, what has been the most productive way of dealing with DFGs? Thank you.
Well, I I do know that the officers in here have put in some additional resource that helps to get assessments done quicker. I think that's bound to help. So I understand that in Torvine, an additional, I'm sure Keith will correct me if I'm wrong about this, but an additional OT has been made permanent or something of that nature, and then also training up some of the other staff that meet with people to do lower level assessments. So all of those things will help to get assessments done more quickly. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Sue.
Housing, OTs, social workers, all.
Can I come in there? Can I come in there, please? Can you come up and speak on the microphone, because it doesn't pick nothing up through the webcasting and things like that. Sorry about that.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Sue Van Eyck and I'm the Regional Director for the South East region of CSSIW. So we deal with 9 local authorities, so we do pick up different little gems from the different authorities. I was just saying, I think that the partnership working that Torvine has stands you in good stead to try to continue to make progress with the disabled facilities grants. I think where you can have departments within the council working together with health partners as well, housing, working along with social services, working with occupational therapists, that's when you will manage to tackle those things more swiftly. And I think you've made some good progress with that. But it's slow, and I think it is just about trying to keep an eye on that and see if the pace of those changes can increase. Because hopefully if you can help people to remain at home, that stops that deterioration and then sliding down the scale to needing more complex and more expensive services. Okay.
Thank you for that. Mary, and then Anthony.
Thank you for the report. You've commented favourably on the ethos of challenge amidst the staff corporate parenting team. Would you like to comment on how successful you think we councillors are in meeting our responsibilities as corporate parents? As I believe you're aware, we've now finished our latest cycle of mandatory corporate parent training. Thank you.
Well, I can only comment on that because that was the first corporate parenting group that I myself had attended. I hadn't been part of CSW before that. And I gave some feedback at the end of that meeting, which I thought was quite a productive meeting. It felt like it was the start of a process, but there was challenge there. I thought it was good that there was training being put in place for members so that they understand their corporate parenting responsibilities. So as a start, it felt very much like a start of a process, but I thought it was a positive start to the process. And I look forward to seeing how that develops now following the training, etc., moving forward.
Thank you. Anthony?
Thank you for the report. I think I think members will welcome the balance you've struck between recognition of good practice and constructive criticism where needed. I think that's a productive approach, and that's one that I hope sort of other sectors follow the lead of. Coming to the financial challenge, I think it's an issue for all local authorities, unfortunately, not just Torvine. We've sought this year in our budget to protect social services from having to make cuts, but can't deny that that still involves difficult choices due to the pressures. So I just maybe welcome your comments on that, and on the challenge going forwards, because lots of financial modelling has been done that suggests by sort of the middle of the next decade, many local authorities would, if they didn't sort of take any measures, would be spending all of their money on social care. I think in all of sort of discussing this, and especially discussing the financial side of this, I think it's important for us as members to recognise the work that social care does for our most vulnerable people. There's lots of tough decisions that we have to make as councillors that attract a lot of protest. Maybe social care is an area that affects a minority of vulnerable people more than any other area of work we do, yet doesn't attract the same number of people who are able to carry placards. And so I think it's important that we as members sort of carry that sort of feeling, and we are the placard carriers for the most vulnerable people. So just really, I'd like your comments really on the financial side of the challenge that faces us.
Well, I guess the financial side of the challenge is as set out, in the sense that we all know that demand is increasing, and as you pointed out, that if it keeps going the way it is, that your total budget could be spent on social services, social care. I think the challenge for lots of local authorities, and some of them are approaching this in different ways, is if you can think about need and people's need as it increases and gets to that point at the top where it's critical and they absolutely need input. It's about decisions of how you balance, because obviously if you can stop people from at this bottom end of the escalator from continuing up the escalator, then that can only be a good thing. So I guess the challenge is balancing where you position resources in terms of building and shaping services that can keep people here. That's a hearts and minds job as much as it is about prevention and building community assets. It's about changing people's cultural ways of looking at care of the elderly and how volunteering, befriend, all of those things. So I think it's a challenge for lots of local authorities. And how you do that in a time when you still have need that needs to be met, that's up here, but also how much finances do you bring here to try and build some of that resilience? The answer is not an easy one. I know some other authorities are, putting in resources into things like community coordination and those sort of things that might be help that we would hope and they hope will help them in the future to build some of that resilience in the community. I'm not sure if you want to add anything more than that. I think it is a considerable challenge. But having said that, I do think that the fact that the budget has been protected does demonstrate the commitment, even though there can't be a promise that can be continued indefinitely.
Thank you. Stuart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a couple of comments and a question I'd like to ask you, Mary. First of all, thank you very much for the review. I think it's a very good review, but we're in a difficult situation with finance, as all councils are, as you pointed out earlier. I'm a little bit concerned about in the report where you refer to the caseload for support for young carers. There's an area there's a huge caseload for that. I am concerned about that. And I am in agreement with my colleague who's mentioned the DFGs. I think we need to improve that situation, although we have improved it slightly. But I think we need to do more work in that area. But my question is in regard to the resources for fostering. Where are we with this resource?
I think that would be a question you would direct to the officers.
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't quite understand your question.
It's mentioned in the review about resources for fostering, that possibly be going outside for funding for this. I wondered where we were with that, Keith.
Well, the bulk of placements we make in terms of placing children are within our in-house resource. We have a very, very low use of independent fostering organisations. They're very expensive and we try not to use them because it usually takes children out of the borough. So, we're not, obviously as demand goes up and we have to juggle, we try and place children as best we can within our own resource. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I haven't got...
That's fine. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you. Richard Clark.
Can I thank CSSIW for the report? We are inspected on a number of things, and it is pleasant to see there's no hidden agenda. It's a fair and reflective, almost a mirror to the service, and very constructive in the points that we take on board as a council. Obviously, it is for the last period when Councillor Bynum was the executive member, and she started, and I'm continuing adopting many of the recommendations, and as you've mentioned today, progress is being made on them, and they're already in our service improvement plans, which have gone to scrutiny, etc. Demand is an issue. We are currently looking at that. There's a piece of work going on. The problem with speaking last is many of the speakers have said what you've wanted to say, but in terms of the finance, I'm very pleased that my colleagues on the Cabinet and their chief officers and the Council thus far, though we haven't made the final decision, have agreed for the standalone budget for social care. I think it shows our priorities are well matched with the views of the members. I do just want to not pick up on what Mary said, but I want to point out that mandatory training was something that actually came from the committee that you sat on. It's not a Welsh Government thing. We as members have taken ownership. Councillor Mills put a motion to this council, and I believe that although it's for the 5-year term of the council, the vast majority, I would say 80% and above of members have already chosen to take that training here in the first year. DFGs is by no means resolved, and the members that have mentioned it, we are not resting on our laurels in that, as well as the money that was referred to in the presentation. The department is heavily focusing on it, meeting it weekly, looking at the list, looking at the review, and it is something that we will not take our eyeball off. Even when we get it to a very, very low figure, we will still keep our eye on it to ensure it doesn't get in the condition that it was. In terms of PIs, I'm glad to note your tick-boxing remark. I think it's more about the quality of service than necessarily tick-boxing, but before Councillor Yowell has me after the meeting, yes, it is very important to meet those performances, and I welcome might be the wrong view on the day, but I welcome the work of both Councillor Yowell and the Chief Executive when they grill us twice a year. I've only been in position a couple of months, and already I've been grilled twice on the performance and scrutiny, and it does show members' interest. So thank you once again for being a critical friend. We do appreciate it. We do listen to you, and I hope we'll have a similar upbeat and positive report next year.
Thank you, Rich. Members, the recommendations are shown on page 41. We are asked to note the feedback, consider that in light the Director's annual report. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Anyone abstaining? No. Against? Thank you. Thank you, Sue and Margaret, for coming to the meeting and explaining everything. I think everybody's happy with it all, so thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Agenda item 11, Torfaen State of the Nation. Alison Ward, Chief Executive, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As members will know, the Christmas Council is the State of the Nation report, which we do once a year, and it's a chance for members to look at the breadth of activities that staff undertake and to review the highlights. I should emphasise it isn't about scrutinising performance. There's lots of opportunities throughout the year through Council, Cabinet, Scrutiny Committees and Audit Committee to do that scrutinising of performance. This is more about recognising some of the things that staff have done. It's a very hard time for staff at the moment, not just in Torfaen, obviously across the public service. They're doing more for less, with fewer people, which means more burden on those that remain. And of course there's the uncertainty around the Williams Commission and what that will mean for their futures and their jobs. But despite that, they're still achieving fantastic things and working very hard for members and for the people of Torfaen. There isn't any fat on the bone, but they're still delivering. This is a very important report for staff. They all contribute to putting information into it, and it matters to them very much that members hear some of the things that they've been doing in one round report. Now, it's a long report, and obviously we've just had quite a long presentation, so I'm not going to go through the report, you'll be pleased to know, but I'm going to just pick out perhaps one highlight from each part of the Council services that staff would particularly like members to be aware of. So if I start with the Public Services Support Unit and the Local Service Board, we've just had mention in the presentation from CSSIW about the single integrated plan. It's easy to say that. It's a huge amount of work to bring it about. And it's brought together in a much more coherent framework the plethora of partnership activities that have been going on under the umbrella of the Local Service Board into one clear strategic framework, around 7 shared outcomes across the public services in Torfaen. And there are 3 priority programmes of action under that plan, which people are leading on across public services, not just within the Council, and that's helping frail people to live independent lives, empowering families with complex needs to achieve their potential, and enabling people to manage the impact of welfare reform. And the Torfaen Local Service Board is actively planning and taking action across all of these areas. So some really clear direction taking place there. Moving on to part 5 of the report, which is the Deputy Chief Executive's services. And we'll talk later about how those are going to be managed after Peter leaves us. I think the thing that I'd like to highlight in terms of those services is what's happening today, the live webcasting. It's really important in terms of the reputation and transparency of the Council. And since its introduction, nearly 4,000 people, believe it or not, have tuned in to watch Council and Cabinet discuss reports and take critical decisions, and that's got to be excellent for democracy. And it's great that people will be watching this Council today. So it's a really important step in engaging local people further in delivering the Council's services and seeing how they are delivered and how well they're delivered. Part 6 of the report talks about community services. Members will see that excuse me, there's a very large amount of activity going on there, much of it excellent. Difficult to choose one service, but if members look at 6.10 of the report, I'd like to just highlight Torfaen Training, which is a particularly successful part of Torfaen's service delivery offering. I think most members will be aware that they got although we have had issues with Estin in other parts of the Council, Torfaen Training got an excellent report for their partnership working from Estin when they were last inspected. The new Welsh Government contract enables Torfaen Training to offer more training opportunities, and currently 194 unemployed people over the age of 16 and 2,478 apprentices are undertaking training. And our apprenticeship attainment rates are at 91%, which is well above the national comparator of 85%. And further plans will establish us as a leading authority in terms of work-based learning delivery across Wales. So long-standing, very substantial achievement on the part of Torfaen Training. Moving on to part 7 of the report, which is technology-led transformation and the SRS. The thing that I think members should be aware of here is that the education teams working in the SRS have now completed the iLearn Wales rollout, getting all of the equipment and laptops out within the deadline to children across Torfaen to use the iLearn Wales system. And it is a fantastic system, and I think now that it's actually in place and all the equipment is being utilised, schools can really begin to see the tremendous benefits it offers in terms of the sharing of best practice learning across not only Torfaen but also Monmouthshire. Moving to part 8 of the report in terms of education, obviously we have had our challenges, which everyone is well aware of in terms of education performance, but there has been improvement and there is continuing to be improvement working alongside partners in Welsh Government and in Estin. So at 8.3, members can see that in terms of results, which is, if you like, is the proof of the pudding, what are you doing, what are you putting in, and is it making a difference to the attainments of young people? At A level, 98.3% of pupils gained A to E star A-level grades in Torfaen, which was above the Wales figure of 97.6%. And at GCSE performance, although some of this data is still being verified, in the WJEC examinations, 76.5% of pupils achieved level 2 A to C indicator, which is up from last year, and 50% of pupils achieved the level 2 A to C indicator, including English or Welsh and Maths, which is up from 45.6% last year. And in terms of Welsh Government's critical success measure, which is where young learners secure 5 A to C grades, including English, Welsh and Maths, which is seen as a key to enabling young learners to move on to post-16 education, we are improving overall. We still have problems with some schools, but the overall picture is much improved, and 2 secondary schools achieved a 20% improvement in their performance, which is really laudable. Planning and public protection, which is at part 9 of the report, I think one must mention the final meeting where the LDP has been finally signed off by members, which of course happened last week. I think members said at the time, but it's worth repeating, the amount of work that's gone into that LDP over the last few years has been very substantial. And for various reasons that everyone understands, it's been a long process, but I think one has to congratulate the staff on finally achieving a plan which is acceptable to Welsh Government and to inspectors. And I do need to mention, I think that we have had a landmark case, Torfaen versus Willis, in which the authority was successful in convincing 5 law lords of the arguments contained within its case regarding the sale of food by the use-by date, and that judgment's got significant implications for the enforcement of food safety legislation across the whole of the UK. So some pioneering work there by our staff. Part 10 of the report refers to neighbourhood services. Although, as I say, this isn't a report about performance, it would be remiss of me not to mention that our performance on waste has hugely improved due to some very concentrated work recently by the neighbourhood services staff. But the part I'd like to pick out particularly for highlight today is at 10.3, which is around economy and enterprise, because in April in Torfaen we hosted the Digital Enterprise Festival in Blaenavon. The Minister attended, as did a number of very senior people from the private sector, from Microsoft, Cisco and Logicalis. So that was a really important event for Torfaen. And in terms of the local investment fund, that has created 220 new jobs, and this figure is projected to increase to 290. And the Springboard, a business innovation centre, secured 6 new investment projects and has now supported the creation of over 450 jobs through that centre and helped lever in over £11 million worth of external business investment. So moving on then to part 11 of the report, which is social care and housing. An awful lot of what I might have said in this report has already been just said by our colleagues from CSSIW, and I think that was overall, although a balanced report, overall a favourable report. Just to pick out one thing I think that needs mentioning, particularly in terms of adult services, you will see that from August 2013, and it was mentioned, the multi-professional duty pod has been established, and that has helped referrals and queries for occupational therapy and older persons with mental health needs to ensure that the right response is provided at the right time by the right team, and we are actually seeing real improvements in terms of faster response to referrals, access to professional advice very quickly and better screening. In terms of children's services, clearly there are issues over the number of looked after children. We're very much aware of that, but on the positive side, we don't have the sort of situations you see elsewhere in children's services across the UK. Children are protected in Torfaen, and members, I think, can be confident that that is a very well run and secure service. In terms of housing, just at 11.5, I think it's worth referring to the fact that housing services have had significant success in levering in greater levels of investment, maximisation of Welsh Government grants, efficiency funding streams, housing-linked private finance has benefited over Torfaen to the tune of over £13 million worth of investment, and has been used in a variety of ways, from improving the quality of energy efficiency to increasing the supply of affordable housing. And members, last but not least, in terms of resources, it would be remiss of me not to highlight the importance of the budget preparations that have gone on for the coming year. It is one of the most financially challenging times for the public sector and for Torfaen that we've ever experienced. But through some very good working in resources and through a discipline across chief officers, we have provided members with a budget that I think, whilst not easy, will be acceptable and will minimise the risk to both jobs and service cuts in Torfaen. We have, of course, now got the profile system, which is something we're piloting for Welsh Government, which is an innovative way of trying to protect jobs for people who are at risk, and I know that members will be having some more information about that in a member seminar in due course. So members, there's a wealth of information in the report, and I'm sure you've all read it, and I'm sure that you all are impressed by some of the things that our staff have done, whilst of course, having reservations about things that still have to improve. So I commend the report to you and ask you to note the achievements of our staff throughout the year.
Members, do you have any questions or comments? No? The recommendations show... Come on, Brian, slow, but...
Well, sorry, Mr Mayor, I was a bit slow. I was hoping that the leader was going to make a remark. It seems to me that a report like that deserves members to respond, because it is an excellent report about an excellent council, by and large. I know there are issues which we're struggling to deal with, particularly in my area of responsibility, but having heard the report from CSSIW as well as Alison's report, I think we should feel pretty satisfied with our staff, who do, as the Chief Executive indicated, I think a very good job in increasingly difficult circumstances. And I hope that members generally would agree with that, because it seems to me that we ought to be on record as saying something along those lines, if we believe it, and I do. And I hope members would agree with me that our members of staff actually deserve a round of applause. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Brian. The recommendations on page 79 on the agenda, we ask to note the activities and achievements of officers of the Council during the past 12 months. Have we all agreed? Show of hands. Thank you. Anyone against? No. Thank you, members. Agenda item 12. Relocation of the duties of the Deputy Chief Executive on his retirement. Alison Ward, Chief Executive, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a report which, as the Mayor has said, sets out how we plan to manage the duties that Peter Durkin currently carries when he leaves the Council. Peter will retire on the 16th of January 2014, but will be taking annual leave from Christmas Eve this year. So effectively, from that date, we will not be having the benefit of his services to the Council. And given the need to make reductions in the budget and given the need for senior management to take the lead in that, there isn't a proposal to replace that role of Deputy Chief Executive. So it falls upon me as head of the paid service to consult with members and with my colleagues as to how his duties will be performed following Peter's departure. And members will, no doubt, be aware that there already has been a report to Cabinet on that. So if I can take members to 4.3 of the report, there are basically 4 different headings under which one can categorise the duties that Peter currently performs. The first one is to deputise for me in my absence. The second is to support the leader in the arrangements for Cabinet Council and other meetings of the local authority. The third is to line manage the strategic services that are managed by Richard Edmonds, customer services and registration, which are managed by Lisa Dando-Ellis, and corporate risk and emergency management, which is managed by Bob Crimp. So those people report directly to Peter Durkin at the moment. And the fourth is a number of cross-cutting corporate boards and groups which Peter either chairs or attends. So if I can take those in order, members. The first one is at 5.1, which is cover in my absence, and this means when I'm either on annual leave or on sick leave or otherwise away from the Council for a substantial period of time. And the proposal there is that Nigel Aurelius, as Assistant Chief Executive Resources, takes over that role in my absence. The second part at 5.2 is support for the leader in terms of arrangements for Cabinet Council and other meetings. These duties primarily take the form of those set out at the bullet points, which is preparation of Cabinet and Council agendas, attendance at pre-Cabinet and pre-Council meetings, and a weekly briefing with the leader. But that's not exclusively those duties. Those are the formal duties. And I know from recent conversations there appears to be some confusion that that would be the only thing that would be covered when Peter leaves. That's not the case at all. There's lots more informal support arrangements between Peter and the leader, which I would be taking on. And I will be continuing also to have my regular briefings with the leader on top of those arrangements to replace Peter. So in terms of all of those responsibilities, I will be taking on the lead for those. In terms of 5.3, that's the line management responsibilities for strategic and democratic services, customer services and emergency management. I think it's just worth very quickly running down those bullet points and remembering all of those things that are contained in that. So corporate communications, the improvement teams that look after performance, democratic services, scrutiny, member support, European policy and funding, regulatory support, working with the Wales Audit Office, the elections staff, and leadership team support to the staff leadership team of chief officers. So all of those functions are currently within strategic services, and it is proposed that I should take over managing those. In terms of line management of customer services and registration, Peter currently directly manages that. The proposal, therefore, on that one is that Richard Edmonds, as Head of Strategic and Democratic Services, takes over management of those functions, but then he reports to me. So, again, they fall under my responsibility. In terms of line management of corporate risk and emergency management, there's some very clear synergies between emergency management and neighbourhood services. Most of the things that need to be corralled at short notice when there's an emergency fall back to the sort of services neighbourhood services provide, and therefore it is proposed that Christina Harry, as Chief Officer, Neighbourhood Services, takes over those responsibilities. In terms of then the remaining leadership of cross-cutting issues, these boards that Peter either chairs or sits on, I'm not going to go through them, members. They're all set out at 5.6. But amongst us, between Dave Congreve as Assistant Chief Exec Dave Congreve as Assistant Chief Exec Communities, Nigel Aurelius, Assistant Chief Exec Resources, Christina, Chief Officer Neighbourhood Services, and Duncan Smith, between us and Matt Lewis, we will cover those boards between us, and if there's any questions on any of those, they're all set out at 5.6. They're not massive parts of Peter's duties, but they are important meetings that need to be covered. In terms of finance, the savings with on-costs will be about £126,000. That's set out at Part 7 of the report. That's already been built into the draft budgets, so that's not a saving on top of what you've already been briefed on in terms of the budget. It's not proposed that anybody in the Council, any officers in the Council, have any change in grades as a result of the responsibilities that they're taking on. At Part 8, the risks are enumerated, and it is important to draw members' attention to these risks. A lot of the people who are taking on these responsibilities will be taking on substantial additional burdens, and that does mean that people will be more pressured, and our ability to respond to member demands will be impacted. That's bound to be the case. I think collectively we need to recognise this and find a way forward with a mutual understanding of the fact that those pressures will be increased, and that everybody will have to work with that to make that achievable. So in terms of the recommendations, members, constitutionally the decision that Council needs to take today is to agree to the Constitution being amended to remove the post of Deputy Chief Executive. The Council's decision, the structure of the senior management of the Council is a decision for Council. So if we're going to remove that post, we need a formal decision of Council to do that. I'm also, though, asking you to note the proposed reallocations of the duties as I've outlined, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Alison. Members, any questions or comments? Leader, I think you want to come in there.
Yeah, I'm glad that Alison has taken us through it word by word. 5.2, I'm very pleased that she pointed out that those 3 bullet points there, they're examples and they're not a definitive list. And obviously, we all want it to work. It'll be a difficult thing to do, but I'm pretty certain we'll do it. And if we don't, then we'll have to review it. But I'm sure it will work.
Stuart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this is purely for clarification, really. In the past, when we've had need to talk with Peter, he's always accommodated us. I suspect you will be taking that role now, Alison. Will be available to members.
Yes, I think what we'll have to work, together on this, because there will be issues perhaps that maybe Peter's picked up on behalf of other chief officers, which could have been directly, directed at those chief officers, and if so, in order to manage the situation, I think that would be the case. If it's clearly a corporate issue or something where you feel you want to go directly to the chief executive, then of course members are always welcome to contact me.
Thank you for that, Alison.
Andy?
Well, as I'm sort of one of the skinflints that who have sort of pointed out the lack of money consistently over the last year, I think it's worth just emphasising and putting on record that it is the right thing to do to make this saving at a time when we're making our staff lower down the grades, sort of take more of a strain, and when we're trying to protect services. It's a saving that's the right thing to do. But that doesn't mean that we don't recognise the strain that's going to be put on those taking over the responsibilities. I think that's fair to say that too today.
Thank you, Anthony. Mary, then Jeff.
Yes, members will have noted that I do have a question down under members' questions, which I'm quite happy to withdraw if, an answer is forthcoming now, if I can incorporate it into this discussion. Because when I framed that question, then we hadn't received the agenda papers with the report that we've now had. I would like to hear from the Chief Executive and the Leader on whether in fact we've already had mention about increased stress on senior chief officers and heads of service. Nigel, for example, probably facing his toughest year with financial management of this council, has some increased duties. I assume, therefore, that bearing in mind we have a duty of care to our staff, that some of the duties of those chief officers will now pass down the line to middle tier officers. And I wonder when we will have a report of the realignment and reallocation of those duties. As I say, I'm quite happy to withdraw the question, though I will note once again my personal admiration of the work of Peter Durkin, who's worked so assiduously. That's a word that scores very highly in Scrabble, and it certainly scores very highly in my estimation of Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Barnett. There is no intention to bring a further report in terms of delegating duties. I think we've had a very thorough discussion at leadership team, and we feel that it's our responsibility to carry this burden as best we can. And the people who work beneath us work just as hard as we do, and somewhere the pressure has to come. And I think the decision we've taken is that we will bear it ourselves. As the leader says, if it is untenable, if it's just too much pressure on any individual, then we will need to review it. But at present, we intend to carry that burden ourselves.
Would the leader like to give a political view of that realignment?
Yeah, we need to go back to square one and ask the question, why are we doing this? I need to remind members that we are the 4th smallest local authority in Wales. In the last couple of years, we've lost housing, we've lost biggest part of education, and we've lost leisure. Now, this is the proper thing to do. There is a saving here, a substantial saving. In my discussions with the officers and with the Chief Executive, they consider that they can do this. And as the Chief Executive has said, if not, then we'll have to come back to it and have a look at it. But we will only be doing what is being done in other local authorities in Wales.
Jeff, you want to come in there?
My concern is with the directorships of the SRS Business Solutions. I'm certainly sure that Christina Harry is more than capable of taking on that role, and I look forward to her having a big impact on that business, which we, people of Torvine, own 50% of. What worries me is whether that's going to be enough, because if you look at the last sort of information about the company trading, up until the end of 31st of March 2015, Torvine Business Shared Resource Business Solutions was trading at a £16,601 loss. We've heard comments today about the need to save money, so we're losing money in that year, and in the financial period up until the 31st of March 2013, we've lost another £15,886. I hope the leader will agree with me, as he is director of the company, that we need to get hold of this before we start to lose any more money, and we need to turn this business into a profitable venture. So therefore, what I'm sort of suggesting is that at the next full council, a report is brought to show exactly where where Shared Resource Services Business Solutions is going. I understand the initial business plan was, let's say, far too over-aspirational. So we need to find out what is the reality and where Torvine money is being spent. At the moment, we're using the share capital that we invested to pay for the cost of the business. That can't be right. So I hope the leader will agree with me that at the next full council, we need to get to the bottom of this. Councils need to know what's going on, and we need to have a proper forward-facing plan for this business.
I got no problem with that, Jeff. We'll bring a report back to the next council, and that report will not only draw attention to the issues which you just raised, but it will also draw the distinction between the SRS and the SRS Private, which are two separate companies. It's very important that members get a grasp on that and understand how they relate to each other. So that's fine. We'll bring a report back to the next meeting.
Just to add to that, I think the situation has changed, Councillor Rees, since you last, the figures that you have, and there has been significant investment in SRS Business Solutions recently, but we will bring a report.
Thank you, Walt. The recommendations are on page 88 of the agenda. We are asked to note, the Deputy Chief Executive note that the post will be deleted from the Councillor Senior Management structure. Are we all agreed? No. Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. Agenda item 13. Automated telephone system. Investigations under the Welsh Language Act. Peter Durkin, Deputy Chief Executive, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report before you members is intended to tell you about the conclusions and recommendations of the Welsh Language Commissioner following her investigation of a possible breach of our Welsh language scheme through the introduction of the automated telephone service. For the sake of brevity, I'll restrict myself to the key messages there. Basically, the English language version of the automated telephone service was implemented on the 27th of June. The Welsh language version was implemented on the 18th of October. The delay in introducing the Welsh language version was due to technical problems in producing the Welsh language scripts, which we wanted to do in-house to save money. The decision to implement the English language version in advance of the Welsh language version was made purely to reduce the pressure on our staff and meet increased demand from customers arising from welfare reform. The Welsh Language Commissioner has concluded that the delay amounted to a breach in our Welsh language scheme. That is technically correct. As a result of that conclusion, recommendations have been made which are set out in the report, and my recommendation is that we accept those recommendations and implement them. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor, but I'm obviously happy to pick up any questions.
Thank you, Peter. Members, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Peter. It says an extensive investigation by the report. Question one, has it cost this council anything financially? And reading in the report, there were only 3 complaints apparently about the thousands of calls we get here. And we know with this new system we've got how difficult it is for people to get through. It's even more difficult now with the bilingual side of it. and through the thousands of calls we get, as we all know, but there were only 3 complaints. And I just wondered, through those 3 complaints, has it cost us anything financially?
It hasn't cost us anything financially, Mr Mayor, other than time taken to respond to the complaints and to respond to the Commissioner's investigation. I'm not complaining that that should be the case. We are required to do so, and we're happy to do so. I think it's helpful to develop Councillor Burnett's point. During the period July to November, the period that our automated system has been in operation, we've received 58,500 telephone calls. 3 complaints were received regarding the Welsh system not going live. Only 12 complaints have been received about our automated system. That puts it in context for you.
Right, Laura?
Yeah, thank you for that, Peter. So, those thousands and thousands of calls, there was just 3 which were so small percentage. I just wonder whether they were complaints from general public, or were they complaints from members that not being implemented?
I'm not able to provide that detail, I'm sorry. They were legitimate complaints.
Councillor Yule?
Yeah. I don't want to start off by correcting Peter, but I will. The 3 complaints about the lack of the Welsh system being rolled out at the same time as the English version must be seen in the context of 12 complaints, formal complaints overall. So there are only 9 formal complaints about the system per se, and 3 from the Welsh language side of the equation. The system itself, since it's been rolled out, I won't bore you with the statistics. Peter's just given you the headline figure. Close to 60,000 calls have been accommodated during that time, and probably a little over a third of those have been accommodated by a voice-to-voice, which was only enabled as a consequence of having the automated system there in the first place. The automated system is there and it's designed to handle less complicated and less complex queries. Those that are more complex queries, and they are growing all the time because of the introduction of the new welfare benefit systems, they are dealt with by a voice, by a human being, which is only enabled, as I've said, because of the intervention of the automated system. The issue, the other side of the equation, the politics of it, the decision to go ahead, I think, was the right decision, because we did save a lot of stress and bother with our frontline staff, and there has been a saving when you consider that in the 3 years running up to the introduction of the automated system, the customer services section lost 12 members of staff, so that had to be factored in as well. So I think all in all, notwithstanding the scuttle that I've heard in the members' room, the amount of formal complaints have been negligible, measured and balanced with the overall voluminous increase in the amount of calls that this system has been able to accommodate. We will address ourselves to the recommendations of the Commission, and that is clear. To not to do that would be absolutely ridiculous. It would be costly, both financially and in terms of a reputation to the Council. But it would be dishonest of me if I didn't hold a personal view as to the sense of moving in this direction, because whilst I am in agreement with and support in general terms the amplification of and the rolling out of the Welsh language in many of the guises that is recommended to us. Given the current economic climate that we're in, given the financial firestorm that we're all combating at the moment, I think it's a disproportionate expense for little return in terms of satisfying a number of people in the borough, when you consider that what resources we have are at the moment being very, very carefully considered and allocated in the best way to benefit the whole of the borough, all our citizens, and not just a small handful. That is a personal view. I don't know if anybody else shares that view, but it is my personal view, and I think it would be right, it is right and proper for me to express that here. But as far as the automated system is concerned, I stand by it. I think it's a marvellous introduction. It's taken a lot of the strain in terms of the amplified, voluminous calls that we've had to accommodate since the beginning of June. And those officers who have rigorously pushed that along should be complimented for their endeavours.
Thank you. Anthony, and then Stuart.
I'd like to draw members' attention to page 99 of our report, which is the section marked context. And as David Joel has said, and I completely agree, we recognise our statutory obligations and indeed support them. I just think it's maybe a pity that there's not a 1.4 under context there that says Torfaen County Borough Council has had to save £40 million over the last 4 years and will have to save another £30 million. Because I just think in discussing this, I think I think it would be a great pity if the Welsh Language Commissioner stuck their heads in the sand about the financial challenge that's facing councils.
Sorry about that. Hold on a minute. Richard, you wanted to come in here, didn't you? And then Stuart. And then...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually meeting the Welsh Language Commissioner tomorrow in a seminar that will be discussing the new guidelines, which are even more stringent than the ones we're referring to at the present moment. Just to perhaps put a little bit of context on that, members may remember a few council meetings ago there was a planning application relating to the Old Trevethin school site. There was a request that that application be put bilingually, made into Welsh and English, and that would have cost this authority over £1,000, or a stair lift to one of the clients of social care. In the end, this was agreed that there would be an executive summary of that report at the cost of £300, which is a few nights in respite care for one of our children in need. I'm not glibly making those remarks about stair lifts and children in care. Anthony and Councillor Yowell have referred to the economic situation. The Welsh language and the provision, therefore, in this valley is a statutory basis, but as Anthony pointed out, we are coming to the area where we are having to make hard and real choices. You had CSIW here today referring to the financial problems that we have, and we are in the context where we do have to consider the money that we're spending. Recently, the Resources and Overview Scrutiny Committee, 16th of October actually, met and discussed the Welsh language. They called me to give evidence, and it was a very interesting, well, my evidence might not have been interesting, but it was a very interesting committee to attend. And I just want to share with you the first representation of the report I had back from that committee, which broadly respected the wishes of anybody in the Valley who wishes to live their life through the medium of the Welsh language, but the Council's response should be proportionate with that demand. And that's, I think, in a summary, all Councillor Yowell, myself, and many members in this room think we respect the Welsh language. I myself started learning and failed miserably recently to learn the language. We respect it, but we also have to point out that there is a financial implication. We would be foolish to ignore the Commissioner's recommendations, so I support the Deputy Chief Executive's actions and would just ask members to bear that in mind.
Thank you, Richard. Stuart?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just for interest, the complaints that are received, I'm amazed at the number of people that the process they go through for the complaints procedure. Does it go through the corporate complaints officer, or does it go through another channel? The reason I say this, I must be the only member here that's been approached by my residents who are totally dissatisfied with the automated system.
The complaints go through the corporate complaints officer, Mr Mayor.
Who else we got? Stuart Ashley, then Glyn, and then Graham Smith.
Councillor Clark was right. It came in front of the resources, and we did say proportionate, but I must remind that it is a statutory responsibility. We do spend a lot of money on it, and as such, it does have to meet need, and I think by and large do. But there are certain things that were found lacking, and this happened, unfortunately. So every time it is found lacking, it does happen. But I do agree with opinions, to be honest. I mean, Bristolian from Bristol having to do that, I thought was ironic. But we don't have a culture, and that seems to be part of the problem. Councillor Clark did mention that, and I thought it was very honest of him to do that, and he's actually learning Welsh. And there's a lot of people learning Welsh, and maybe the need to have a culture in which it's practised and learned was something that came up. And I think that is part of the problem, but we need more staff that can do Welsh, and that was part of what came up as well. And you were very honest about it, I thought.
Thank you, Stu. Glyn?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to refer to page 107, recommendation 6B. I understand from this that we have to confirm the Council's plans by the end of December 13, so I'm assuming we have some plans in hand at this moment in time. But I was wondering how, given the present nature of the austerity we're having to go through, we are going to increase the capacity of the Council's Welsh language unit.
I'll kick off the answer on that, Mr Mayor. My colleague David Congreve may wish to come in if I don't give sufficient detail for you. The draft budget that the Cabinet has approved as a basis for consultation in community services contains a sum of £40,000 intended to address the costs we will incur when the new standards, or go some way to address the costs that we incur when the new standards come into place. So I think the answer to your question is that provision has been made. Whether it will be sufficient, we'll have to wait and see. And will hinge upon the Council accepting the budget.
Could I perhaps come back on that, Mr Mayor? Because, I mean, obviously we've only recently had these recommendations, and presumably we put that 40,000 in there, which I was aware of, prior to having these recommendations. So are we therefore going to have to make some amendments to what we originally intended to spend the money on?
No, I don't think so, Mr Mayor. I think the impact of the Commissioner's recommendations, should you accept them, will have the effect of increasing our provision in advance of the standards taking effect. Does that help? I'm tempted to say happy coincidence.
Could you just come in on it? Dave, you happy with that? Do you want to come in there a bit?
Only just, I think, to reiterate a couple of points that Peter's made, really. One is that the amount that's gone into the budget, as with every other savings measure, has obviously been put in recognising there's an opportunity cost, but also I think has gone in very much at the lower end of our expectations in terms of compliance with what are much more demanding Welsh language standards, which, as the executive member has mentioned, are subject yet to further confirmation and discussion. So therefore we will very much need to keep that whole situation about our capacity, which is the phrase that's used in this recommendation, and our capacity for compliance with the new standards under review. So I think Peter's right to draw attention to the fact that we have partially addressed the issue that the Welsh Language Commission has raised in this context, and that it is the same issue, the financial and officer capacity to address the Welsh language standards, that we'll need to keep under review in due course.
Thank you, Dave. Smith? Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to firstly commend Councillor Clark and Councillor Yowell on being tremendously diplomatic. I won't let that worry me. I think that the thing that strikes me is that the Council, as has been set out, has acted in entirely good faith at every stage in the implementation of the automated telephone answering thing. And so the decision to introduce the English version first, taken in good faith in order to deliver better services to the residents of this borough. Great. The Welsh Language Commissioner then comes back and says, well, by acting to introduce better public services for the people of this borough, this council is at fault. Well, to me, that is absolutely perverse. So in the world of the Welsh Language Commissioner, it is the case that it is preferable to offer less good, less effective services to the people who live in this borough if it involves any deviation whatsoever from the absolute letter of the statutory responsibility. To me, that's just perverse. Just perverse. The Council has acted in good faith. Peter Durkin has said that the translation to create the Welsh script was done in-house to save money. Absolutely commendable. That took a little bit longer than the English one. Well, that's not particularly surprising. Yet at no stage was there ever any suggestion that there would not be a Welsh language version. I think this is it is absurd for this council to be beaten up for what is a extraordinarily minor infraction, as I read it. Other members may disagree, and so it's not just about the money that's been spent by this local authority to deal with this issue. The Welsh Language Commissioner, plus all her staff, have obviously been soaking up taxpayers' money at the same time. I suppose they validate their existence by producing a big long report on our tiny, tiny, tiny infraction which was carried out in good faith. So it's been pointed out this authority does have a statutory duty. We do have a statutory duty to comply with the law, comply with these regulations. I, however, don't have a statutory duty to support this motion, so I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I only wanted to agree with Councillor Evans and his view about the complaints. I find it surprising, well actually unsurprising, because they're formal complaints about the system. And I'm not talking about the Welsh ones, I'm talking overall, the fact there's only 12. When it first got released, I had a number of people contact me and say they had difficulty with the service, and I myself had difficulty as well. But we never made them formal complaints, and that's the difference. But there have been issues.
Mr Mayor, I accept that may be an issue. It is always difficult when this sort of system is put in place. Councillor Yale has already made the point that it was necessary for demand management. It's a concept that we hear a lot of in these days of financial difficulty. The intention is to guide people who need not speak to another voice, who have routine inquiries, they want a replacement bin, they've had a miscollection, to guide them to electronic capture of data, basically, into an answer machine, to use forms, to use email. All these forms of communication are increasing, and I think that is good. We obviously remember that not everyone will want to use those, and there will, as a result of the automated system, be more space for those people to access a pulse, a voice. The one thing I will say to Councillor Cross is that as a result of the expressions of dissatisfaction, if you like, as opposed to formal complaints, we have listened to what they've been saying. We have amended the script. So I think if you are using the system now, you will find it different again, and we hope easier to use. So I stand by the formal statistics, but I appreciate what she's saying, and I think there has been some benefit from those perhaps more informal expressions of opinion.
Thank you. Mary?
Question on page 106, recommendation 3, which is about equality and procurement guidelines review. I note that the schedule says that the review should be completed by the end of December 2013. When can we as a council have a report on the findings of that review?
I'm conscious that I'm making promises that I won't be delivering here. So I need to be a bit careful on this. I suspect that when I speak to our head of procurement, Andy Maisy, that this is not going to be a difficult task. He may put me right on that. I would envisage that if not the January Council, certainly the next Council would see a report on this.
We'll all do that one, Pete. There we are. Right on, members. The recommendations are on page 93 of the agenda. And we're asked to accept the Welsh Language Commissioners in paragraph 5.3 of the report. Are we all agreed? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? All right. Right. Thank you, members. Right, before we go on to the next report, we're going to have 20 minutes break for people to sort some things out and whatever. So we got 20 minutes break. Okay? Thank you. Right away. Agenda item 14. City Region and Report. Christine Ari, Chief Officer for Neighbourhood Services, can you present the report, please? She hasn't come in yet, have she?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, members. The purpose of this report is twofold, is to provide you an update on the emergence of the South East Wales City Region and also to receive and endorse the publication Delivering a Future with Prosperity, which is the regional strategy supporting the City Region. In terms of background, I thought it would be useful to set the scene and give you an idea of how we've got to where we are today. Okay, thank you. Of the 4 depressed areas that were designated for economic relief back in 1934 by the Special Areas Act, only South Wales retains this sad status today. If there is no fundamental change in our approach that brings improvement over the forthcoming years, the South Wales valleys will have to confront the reality of 100 years of relative economic decline. Cities are not self-sufficient entities, and this is especially true of Cardiff. Indeed, few cities have been as dependent upon their regional partners as the Welsh capital. Without the dramatic growth of the coalfield in the South Wales valleys, there would have been no need for the export facilities built at Cardiff Docks, and without these facilities, Cardiff wouldn't have become the success story it was in the early 20th century. This interdependence upon each other is still relevant today, and it is this concept that the city-region approach embraces to drive economic growth. A new political commitment came in the autumn of 2011 when Edwina Hart, the Minister for Economy, Science and Transport, asked Dr Elizabeth Hayward to chair its City Regions Task and Finish Group to explore the applicability of the city-region concept to economic development in Wales. In July 2012, the report presented a total of 22 recommendations, which included the go-ahead for the creation of city regions in South East Wales and Swansea Bay. The report also made the case that a city-region approach would also allow for a more strategic approach to planning, skills and learning, transport and housing allocation, all of which needed to be planned on a regional rather than a local scale. In July this year, the Swansea Bay City Region was launched, and their regional strategy has also been presented. The launch of the City Region Board in South East Wales was delayed as its membership was much more complex. However, at a plenary session in the Assembly on the 19th of November, the Minister unveiled the full City Region Board. In addition to seats for local government, including our own leader, Councillor Wellington, the business community, higher education and trade union sectors are represented, with Roger Lewis, the chairman of the Welsh Rugby Union, chairing the board. One of the challenges facing the new City Region Boards is the impending Williams report, which is widely expected to recommend a significant reduction to the number of local authorities across Wales. And it is for this reason the Minister has left the operational details of how these boards will work and what powers and resources they will have available to them. This emerging policy position over the last 2 years has been closely monitored by the 10 local authority leaders and chief executives through the South East Wales Regional Partnership Board. The board asked its Directors of Environment and Regeneration to form a task and finish group to formulate the essential requirements to realise the agreed vision for the region, being a thriving nation, visible internationally and distinctively Welsh. The regional strategic framework presented to you today is the result of this work and has been endorsed by the Regional Partnership Board. The strategy sets out key priority investments that local authorities in the region wish to see implemented in order to secure sustained future prosperity for the region and links to Welsh Government policies. Also detailed in the strategy are measures of success to measure the impact of those projects as they are implemented. 3 strategic priorities have been identified in the strategy, and they are, firstly, place. And that's about investing in our connectivity, whether that's transport or digital connectivity, investing in our town centres, housing and planning. The second stage, the second priority, is business support and development, so supporting our business community. And thirdly, people and skills, investing in our people to ensure that they have the right skills for the economy we have in the region. Key projects under each strategic priority have been identified, and funding options for these projects are being explored through the next round of European funding and other major sources of external funding available. And accompanying this document, there is also a draft European funding programme to support the funding of the projects. Top of the list for these transformational projects is the South Wales Metro, which is so much more than a mere transport project. The Metro affords an opportunity to develop denser and better connected communities around metro stations, thereby reducing car use and congestion. Amongst the many things needed for a successful metro, innovative finance and political consensus are arguably the most important, and the City Region Board will need to consider these issues very early on, especially as funding has already been made available from Welsh Government for Phase 1. With better connectivity being a top priority, innovation and economic development is a close second, and green infrastructure a close third, and these are identified within the strategy. Whilst each of these projects has a different theme, they are common to one another in that they make a significant impact on a city region scale, as opposed to projects of purely local significance. The city-region agenda, whilst challenging on a number of levels, has the potential to bring significant economic growth to the South East Wales region, and it is on this basis I seek your approval of the Regional Spatial Strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, for that. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Rees.
Plaid Cymru heartily welcomes the creation of a city region. It's a model that's been used in other European countries, for 20 years. They had the powers to do it then. I'm glad that we've got the power to do it now, so let's go on and build a world-class economy for the region and for Wales. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to congratulate and pay tribute that this report that Christine has just made to this council, then officers, the equivalent to Christine, is making the same report, not identical, but a similar report to their councils as in the other 9 local authorities. So what they're doing is taking it through their councils to then use it as a tool. I want to pay tribute to all the work that's been done by our officers, and indeed right across South East Wales, actually, in putting together this report. It's a first-class report. It'll obviously have to be taken cognizance of by the City Region Board, because at the end of the day, in terms of governance of these issues, then local government is the only people that can do it. And so, thank you very much for that report, Christine. This really is a big issue, probably the biggest that we face as a council, or indeed most other councils face for the coming years. It's a 20, 40, 60 years project. It's enormous. It has all sorts of implications, not only on transport, on the metro system, but all sorts of other things. You'll read the report. It talks about housing, planning. I spent about 2 hours yesterday with Professor Kevin Morgan at Cardiff University, talking to him about how they see it. What does it mean? What is it? What does it look like? What's the moves that you have to go through to get there? And this probably is the most exciting thing that has happened to South East Wales, certainly since I've been a politician. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Leader. The recommendation is on page... Sorry, Councillor Smith.
Oh, your apologies are always accepted, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points I wanted to make. There's a modest typo, page 109, 6.1. South East Wales a thriving nation. I think it's a thriving region, or aspires to be a thriving region. Just a couple of other points I wanted to make. Obviously, there's the sort of shadow of the local government reorganisation that's sort of looming over us. I do wonder if this South East Wales city region is perhaps somewhere where we might end up in terms of what might be called local government, or in this case regional government, which is an interesting thing to contemplate, I think. In terms of the possibilities of addressing the real issues we face, we in Wales are the poorest part of the United Kingdom. Obviously, we need to do all we can to resolve that. So anything that we can do to create a framework, an environment where wealth creation is encouraged and supported has to be applauded. Obviously, transportation links are important, whether it's physical transportation or e-infrastructure, for want of a better word. That is to be applauded. And obviously, as we always seem to touch on, the very scarce resources we have to deal with now in the public sector, that there could be inevitable efficiencies that might derive from such an evolution. So, yes, it's interesting times. I think there are many positive things to be welcomed. Obviously, I think we should see how these things evolve, but generally it seems a reasonable direction to move in. Thank you.
A couple of comments on that. I need to be careful what I'm saying, but I'll say a couple anyway. That we are waiting for the Williams Commission to come in. I understand the First Minister is going to have that this month in December. He'll consider it over Christmas. There'll be a statement in February or March. There'll be lots of other things going on. There'll be a consultation process. But there's no doubt about it that these two are linked. And we'll have to wait and see what comes out at the end of it, but they definitely are linked.
Thank you both for that. Right, the recommendation is on page 112 of the agenda. We are asked to agree to the publication Delivering a Future with Prosperity, and confirm our endorsement to the South East Wales Regional Partnership Board. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? No. Thank you. That's agreed. Agenda item 15. M4 corridor around Newport. Christine Ali, Chief Officer, Neighbourhood Service. Can you present the report, please?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Is the mic working? Yeah? Yeah, okay. This report is very much linked to the previous report because, if you recall, one of the main priorities for the city region is transportation and connectivity. And one of the main projects that sat within that strategy is the M4. So the Welsh Government consultation that is currently ongoing for the proposals for the M4 is quite timely for us. It identifies the M4 as critical to the Welsh economy through transporting goods, linking people to jobs and employment, and also it serves the Welsh tourism industry. The consultation opened on the 23rd of September, and the consultation closes the 16th of this month. So the purpose of this report is to set out our draft response to the consultation, for which I'm seeking your approval. So for those of us who've travelled the M4 around the Newport area, we've all experienced it. We've been sat in a traffic jam. And when the tunnels, when something happens in the tunnels, all of South East Wales comes to a complete standstill. We've all experienced it. Congestion on the M4 is causing unreliable journey times and reduced service levels, and therefore hinders the economic development of South Wales. And the reason for that is that the section of M4 around Newport doesn't meet modern motorway design standards. It has large sections of two lanes, and that limits capacity and brings congestion and the unreliable journey times. The Welsh Government's ability to borrow has changed the scale and affordability of previous options that have been presented to us for consultation. So the main element of the draft plan is the provision of a section of a 3-lane motorway between junctions 23 at Mega and 29 at Castleton on the south side of Newport. And 3 routes are being proposed. The first route is the Black Route, which is the preferred option by Welsh Government, and I have a plan on the next slide. But I just want you to note the costs here. The first route, the Black Route, is 936 million. The purple route is 947 million, and the red route is 830 million. And like I said, the black route is the preferred option, which is a 3-lane motorway, basically bypassing Newport. And what the proposals are is that through this preferred option, that 40% of the existing traffic using the M4 would be diverted away from it. So significant amounts of traffic. And I apologise for the size of this, because this is what was contained within the consultation response report. But you can see the different colours there. The black route running to the south, yeah. The red, there's a red route and a blue route there as well. So in terms of our response, and our response is detailed in 511 and between 511 and 522 of the report, but I'll draw out the main sort of themes for you. The first one is around traffic volumes. Between junction 23 and 29, traffic volumes have remained constant over the last 7 years. That is unexpected because that really mirrors what is happening across the UK as a whole, and that is linked very much to the economic downturn. Welsh Government forecasts within the consultation document have highlighted that between 2005 and 2030, they indicate an increase in traffic growth. So that is their justification for the need of the proposals. What we are saying is that we feel that the proposals fail to predict the impact of the proposed metro system, which I referred to in my previous report, across the region, and also the electrification of rail proposals currently being implemented across the Valleys area. Just as a comparison, when the Newcastle Metro was built in the 1990s and the Bordeaux tram network completed in 2004, peak traffic flow in those cities fell by over 30%. A similar impact could be expected in Newport and Cardiff. An electrification of the South Wales main line alone would reduce M4 peak traffic flows by up to 15%. So on that basis, we are questioning the need for the schemes. Whilst we support it, and we recognise the benefit to the region as a whole, based on the statistics provided, we are questioning the need for the scheme because we don't feel that they have looked at and integrated the proposals around metro and electrification of rail in particular into the traffic predictions for the future. However, based on the assumption that the traffic flows on the existing M4 would be reduced, any congestion caused by traffic congestion on the M4 within Torfaen should ease. So there's a bit of a good news story there. The second area that we've highlighted in our response is from an economic perspective. Again, we recognise the importance of an efficient and effective motorway network for us, and the effective links to the regional economy and also our own local economy. Our close proximity to the M4 is a key driver for encouraging new business to the area and ensuring our existing businesses are retained. Our economy and enterprise strategy, which Council approved back in the summer, sets out our plans for growing the economy in Torfaen. If the existing M4 junctions providing access to Torfaen are significant in order to encourage economic growth as well as serving our tourism industry around the World Heritage Site, so it is essential that those junctions are retained. So it's therefore essential that these junctions remain or are improved, and if the M4 is reclassified as trunk road, which is part of the proposal under the preferred route, so that where the M4 currently passes along not through Torfaen, but by Torfaen, as part of the proposals, they would actually declass that section of motorway down to a trunk road. So it will no longer be classed as a motorway network. So obviously, any classifications of the road network, we would want it to be maintained as motorway, because that is a key driver for our local businesses coming into Torfaen. So from an economic perspective, we have concerns regarding the perception from the business community that we are located further away from the motorway network, which may hinder our economic growth. So we would therefore wish for any reclassification of the road network proposed under these proposals maintains the status of motorway. So that essentially is the main elements of the officer's response, which I'm seeking approval from you today to forward this report as Torfaen's comments in response to the Welsh Government consultation. And I'd also like to advise Council that we have also supported the SUTA response, which is the Regional Transport Consortia, of which we're a member, which follows a very similar theme. In terms of next steps, the consultation closes on the 16th of December. Welsh Government will consider those responses and make a decision whether to adopt the draft plan or make any amendments. And I am aware that they are getting a significant response from a number of groups, particularly environmental groups, because these proposals pass through a number of areas of very high environmental standards. We're expecting an announcement in early 2014. And just the last point there is that we generally support being involved as and when the elements of the draft plan are being developed and implemented. So we would very much wish to continue with the dialogue that Welsh Government have offered us to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Members, any comments, questions? We start with Stuart, John, Glyn, Mary.
Right. Number one, can I declare a membership of Torfaen Friends of the Earth, please? Does that enable me to talk?
I think that would still allow you to talk on relation to the proposals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, Christina's right. The environmental impact of this is going to be considerable. It's already been thought of once. And there are alternative proposals, the so-called Blue Route that's been proposed fairly recently regarding upgrading the A48, which I think you might have seen in the press recently. That was one one offer, which hasn't been proposed on this at all. The other thing I wanted to ask, and you obviously got the information because you mentioned it, what would be the environmental impact of all that lot? Because it passes through SSIs, if I'm not incorrect. And there's also, if you look on there, a lot of the remaining flatlanders bordering the Severn, and also Went Wildlife Trust's reserve, a whole lot of stuff. Plus a lot of the communities that are Newport, would be sandwiched basically between new motorways. The other thing that was suggested in that blue report was the upgrading of the system around Newport. And also, the other thing got on offer is the metro system, the electrification. I must admit, most environmental groups actually question, if you put that lot into place, why do you need another motorway, which was the basis of why it was fought off in the first place. The other thing that's also came out recently in the news was the considerable ownership of cars in this part of Wales, which I think bears on it, because part of it has to be, we've got the economic argument about things being transported by lorries, etc. But personal ownership of cars, we're probably alongside Blaen y Gwent own the most cars per personal use of cars, and that was borne out by the RAC charity, which said Blaen y Gwent and Torfaen, I think, are the most personal use of cars in the whole of the UK, if I'm not incorrect. I can get that information if you need it. But that means that any use of roadways is going to immediately be going to fill. I believe I'm right on that. Yeah, I think you've got those stats. I suspect you might have. So any motorway, any roadway is immediately going to get filled up as soon as it's completed. So I question us building motorways. We're better to have systems whereby we limit use or provide public thing. I'm not going to support this. I'm not going to vote against it. I'll abstain. But thank you very much for that presentation anyway.
Chris, do you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, if I could just respond to a few items. The blue route that you referred to, Councillor, is a route that has been proposed by Councillor Professor Cole, Stuart Cole, who's a member of the Institute of Logistics and Transport. So that proposal will be submitted in response to the consultation. So that is something that Welsh Government will have to duly consider. In terms of the environmental impact, our response hasn't focused on that at all. We've very much taken it from a traffic perspective and an economic perspective. And because the detail within the consultation was quite limited, really. But I know, as I mentioned in my presentation, that a lot of the environmental groups are really latching onto this and are taking that forward.
Thank you. John?
Yes, thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I obviously support the recommendation, but Christina did say that there is a question of the need for the scheme, and I think this probably is consistent with many of the different professional organisations that are responding to this consultation. It seems to me there is a lack of consistency between all these consultees where everybody has a differing opinion. And so really it's going to be up to the Welsh Assembly at the end of the day to go through all these opinions and make some sort of a judgment or on what system they're going to apply.
Thank you. Clint?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having looked at this and having had some prior looking at the draft plan consultation, I am concerned that it is a very draft. As you say, there's nothing holistic about it at all. It doesn't look at transport. It doesn't look at environmental issues. In fact, as far as I can gather, there are very limited ideas about where junctions and roundabouts are going to be on any of these routes. So I do have huge, grave concerns about... I mean, it seems to me that this is a decision about whether or not there should be a route round Newport. And really, that shouldn't be the question. That is something that Welsh Government should have decided upon before they come this far, and therefore I think this consultation should be far more firmed up than it is. I've got grave doubts about it. but I will support the council on this issue.
Thank you, Glenn. Mary?
Yes, I mean, I'm glad that the officers have noticed concerns about the kind of distancing of the M4 from Torvine and the almost certain impact that would have on economic growth. I assume you're referring to the inward investment and our capability of encouraging that. But there's another aspect of economic growth. Vast numbers of our residents need to travel out of the borough to work or to universities or training establishments, whether it be Bristol or Cardiff or indeed all over South East Wales, Port Talbot, Swansea, etc. And I'm very concerned that that extra sort of journey that this might cause will be one step too far for some of them who need those jobs to survive these economic times.
Thank you for that, Mary. Jeff?
Plaid Cymru does not believe that a proposed new M4 relief road around Newport will be value for money, and we've called instead for a national transport plan. Plaid Cymru has called on the Welsh Government to avoid any deal with the UK Government on the M4 relief road, and instead carry out a rolling programme to upgrade the A48, which is the blue route, which Councillor Ashley alluded to earlier. Therefore, we won't be voting for the report, we'll be abstaining, and we'll be responding to the consultation as a group ourselves.
Thank you, Jeff. Leader? And then John? John?
I'm going to certainly support the recommendation because I've got a family that travels that area every morning, and it's absolute nightmare to get from here through that and back every night. Yeah, it's absolutely crowded, and something's got to be done around that area. There's no doubt about it. And I'm sure that they have looked into it because I went to a meeting once with Peter Ain, where he is trying to drive the bus on this, and it's something as similar as what God said. No. I think they're doing their best, and I think we've got to support them.
Thank you for that, John. Do you want to come in, Leader?
Sorry, Mr Mayor. Of course, there'll be different arguments in different parts of Wales about this. I've got to tell you a little story that I attended a meeting about 2 years ago, at which Edwina Hart was speaking, and it was a month after the fire in the tunnel. And she was saying that the concerns of the business community, certainly the further west you go, the more difficulty you've got. And there are many businesses in places like Carmarthen and the other side of Cardiff whose businesses rely on a daily input or output in order to survive. They send things across the bridge every day and they have things back over the bridge every day. And I know that when that fire did occur, it shut down the business in a huge part of Wales because it couldn't function. Now, at the end of the day, these recommendations, that's okay, and I see you've got Souter in there, but they are recommendations as far as consultation is concerned. And there is no doubt about it that the Assembly will make the final decision on it. And whilst they bear in mind our considerations, including the environmental things, they'll also have their own concerns about how they can resolve the business problem for West Wales. How do you have another tunnel? Do you go round Newport or whatever? So you need to remember this is a consultation. And whilst we might consider all the things we are saying is right, I'm pretty certain there are authorities in the west of Wales that will be concerned about them getting their goods out and getting their supplies in.
Thank you, Leader. Any more? No. The recommendation is on page 140 of the agenda. We're asked to send our comments as set out in the report to the Welsh Government and note our support of the South East Wales Transport Alliance response. Are we all agreed?
Yeah.
Show of hands. Right away. Against? Abstaining?
I mean, abstain. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, all members, that's agreed. Agenda item 16. Petitions resurfacing of various roads in Lantarnham, Cumran. Christine Alley, Chief Officer Neighbourhood Services, and you present the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to note the response to the petition that was presented by Councillor Maria Graham at the last council. The petition was signed by 55 residents, and it was seeking to resurface Brangwyn Avenue, Oakfield Road and Hogarth Close. Just wish to highlight the context in which this petition was received. The authority currently has an estimated maintenance backlog of some £25 to £30 million, and the current capital investment that the Council provides and also the Welsh Government provides brings us approximately 5% of that sum per annum to address these maintenance issues. As a result of that, it is essential that any requests for surfacing or any surfacing that needs to be carried out is undertaken on an evidence-based approach using a priority system which is set out within the Council's highway maintenance policy. So having considered the petition against the authority's procedures for prioritising resurfacing works, it is concluded that Brangwyn Avenue, Hogarth Close and Oakfield Road, whilst deemed a high priority in our prioritising list, do not warrant resurfacing when considered against other priorities across the county borough as a whole. However, to ensure that the safety of those highways is maintained, I can confirm that our safety inspections by my highway inspectors will continue to be carried out, and these roads will also be considered once again in our annual prioritisation for resurfacing next year. So the executive member and myself have considered the petition request and have concluded that whilst we cannot support the request made in the petition, the assessment of those roads will be undertaken as part of the annual prioritisation procedure for all streets for possible inclusion in next year's resurfacing programme. I'm asking that Council notes the report and the action taken as a result and the response that has been sent to the first named petitioner and also Councillor Graham. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Members, any comments or questions? Dio?
One comment. I think it would be useful, Christina, if you publish, perhaps through Torvine Talks, the criteria for prioritisation, because there is a perception, certainly amongst some of the residents in our constituency in Panteg, that some daft decisions have been made in terms of prioritising one road against another. Now, I can see both sides of the argument. I have to represent their interests, but I have some insight into the degree of dilapidation that requires the intervention in this sense. But I think it would be useful if in the next edition of Torvine Talks you could perhaps have a little squib in there about what the criteria are, because there's a lot of confusion leading to a lot of anger, certainly in my ward.
Thank you for that, Dave. Do you want to respond to that, Christine?
The Highways Maintenance Plan is actually published on the Council's website, so the criteria is detailed within that. And I'm also aware that we have done previous communications through Torvine Talks on highways maintenance and how we prioritise. But I'm happy to speak with my communication colleagues to programme something in during the course of next year.
Thank you for that. Anyway, members, move on. The recommendations on page 145 of the agenda. And we are asked to note the report, the actions taken as a result of the petition and response sent in the main petitioner. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. Agenda item 17, the Vardic Hill proposal. Peter Durkin, Assistant Chief Executive. Peter, go on, Peter, take over. Go on, Pete.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Duncan Smith had to leave the meeting for another meeting. This report is for information. It sets out basically, or reminds you, that the Council refused planning permission for a land reclamation and coal recovery scheme at the Varteg in January 2011. That refusal was appealed by the developer. Following a public inquiry a year later, the previous minister with responsibility for these issues announced he was minded to allow the appeal subject to completion of a satisfactory Section 106 agreement. The Council at that time received advice that in these circumstances it would be unreasonable not to cooperate with the appellant in the production of a draft bilateral agreement, so we did that, and had in fact commenced consultation on the draft agreement when on the 22nd of November this year the now Minister decided to refuse planning permission. The report, as you would expect, puts a lot more detail behind that, the considerations that would be taken into account by the Minister, but essentially it's there for you to note for your information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Peter. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Wayne?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to thank the Chief of Planning, Duncan Smith, and his team for being open and transparent with the public during and following the appeal, a process which became complex because of the mindful to allow by the Inspector and the Section 106 draft modified agreement, which I am going to address here, but I'm not going to answer any questions because to the statement. Like my ward councillors, I am also relieved that the Minister has turned down the appeal by Glamorgan Power Company. For at least 10 years, residents living at the Varteg have been subjected to the uncertainty of living near an open cast mine, and within that time the company has shown nothing other than arrogance to the people living there. Not once in all those years did they consult with residents other than showing plans that they were going to open cast mine very near to their homes. And it was coming to them whether they liked it or not. An arrogance which showed very clearly when Glamorgan Power Company, knowing their application might be turned down at council, resorted to offering generous monetary offers to residents. This only days before councillors were voting on whether to refuse Glamorgan Power's planning application. Had the company at the very outset of their application embarked on a consultation path involving residents in the setting up of a liaison group, then just things could have been a little different. Turning my attention to the decision by the Minister, Carl Sargent, not to allow the appeal, I am very relieved by the Minister's decision not to do so. But I cannot hide my disappointment that he agreed with nearly all of the Inspector's conclusions. With so many of the concerns over the environmental impacts of the scheme seem to be acceptable, and the MTAN document, which is there to protect communities living within 500 metres of any proposal to open cast mine, didn't seem to concern him. But nevertheless, I am encouraged by the recent news that Carl Sargent does seem to be listening to residents. And a question forum will take place soon at the Welsh Assembly over the MTAN. Without doubt, the Varteg lays testament to making the MTAN a legitimate document. What now, we ask? What are the options for Glamorgan Power Company? It seems that there are three options being considered by the directors of this company. One, they may challenge the Minister's decision through a very expensive route of a judicial review. Or two, they could submit a fresh planning application and address the Minister's concerns over a modified Section 106. Or thirdly, do absolutely nothing. I say to this company, upon considering their options, my suggestion would be for them to consider the third option and relieve themselves of any further costly expense and time, and let the residents of the Varteg live in peace and without the fear and concern of an open cast mine hanging over them any longer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Pete, anything you want to add to anything?
Only to say I think Councillor Tomlinson summed up the options entirely accurately, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. The recommendations are on page 152 of the agenda. We are asked to note the report. We all agreed? Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? All agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 18, motions. Councillor Bevan, your motion are on page 153. Can you move your first motion and speak to it now, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this fairly brief. The first motion really came about as a result of an issue that was highlighted on the BBC on the Countryfile programme, where it highlighted the plight of farmers that were being impacted with the costs of clean-up and removal for fly tipping of items and building materials and stuff on their land. So I hope that members would have seen that programme beforehand and at least be aware of the issue. We are still very much a rural community. I think most members have farms within their wards. I personally have probably got about half a dozen. I'm hoping that this will elicit cross-party support, because I don't think that this should incur a significantly high cost to Torfaen County Borough Council in adopting it. So without further ado, I propose that Torfaen County Borough Council adopt a policy whereby farmers do not have to incur costs for the removal and clean-up of illegally fly-tipped items on their land.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. You got a second to that? Mr. Smith. Leader?
Yeah, well, I think that John Cunningham is the best person to respond to this, given that he's dealing with it on a daily basis right across the borough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very laudable view. They're looking after your farming communities, but I need to give you some information to show that we do have a responsibility to all our communities, and just to share with you information that commits us to that. Currently, the responsibility for removing fly tipping rests with the landowner under Section 89 of the Environmental Protection Act of 1990. Therefore, fly tipping occurs on private land. It is for the private landowner to dispose of it. This applies to farmers, estate owners, individual householders, RSLs and the like. A change in primary legislation will be required in order for the Council to take on this responsibility. The Natural Resources Wales has a power under Section 59 of the Environmental Protection Act of 1990 to remove fly-tipped material from private land where there has been irregular deposits over time and the landowner has failed to act. The NRW would generally only enforce it where these landowners have failed to take preventative measures to deter fly tipping, for example, by erecting a fence or replacing a gate. The costs of removal by the NRW can be recovered from the landowner. Additionally, the local authority can require landowners to remove rubbish from their land if it is likely to create a nuisance to neighbours or attract rodents under Section 4 of the Prevention of Damage by Pest Act of 1949 or Section 80 of the Environmental Protection Act of 1990. Both of these provisions require landowners or occupiers of land to remove nuisance accumulations from their land on public health grounds. This issue is being discussed as part of a fly tipping strategy for Wales, and at a recent forum attended by environmental health colleagues, the issue of fly tipping on private land was discussed at depth. One authority in Wales is trialling a system whereby farmers are provided with a fly tipping note to allow them free access to the HWRC, that's the Household Waste Recycling Centre, to dispose of their fly tip rubbish on their land. The farmers have to apply to the council beforehand and provide details about the nature and quantity of the waste along with their address and vehicle registration. I must stress that at the moment is being trialled in some other authority. In line with all the other councils in the UK and legislative precedent, it is Torfaen Borough Council's policy that the council, as a public body, should not be expected to meet the cost of clearing fly-tipped waste from private land. Should the council do this for farmers, then what about other private landowners, such as residents or other large landowners, such as private estates? It is not considered prudent to incur additional cost at a time of diminishing resources. In view of this being debated and considered nationally, it would be premature to adopt such a motion within Torfaen County Borough Council at this juncture, and it's recommended that we await the outcome of the national debate and to see whether primary legislation will be changed in this regard. So I would move that the Council do not support this motion.
I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Second that. So, we got a motion now. Well, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to obviously thank Councillor Bevan for bringing this motion to Council and raising the debate, and thank Councillor Cunningham for his full response. I think it's very interesting to hear that a policy is being trialled that does help alleviate the situation that farmers find themselves in. We talk about, I think, as Councillor Bevan pointed out, many wards do have farms. I think there's about 12 or 13 farms in my ward, probably more than most wards. And they are effectively small businesses. Like any other businesses, they're suffering from the tight financial situations. And farming has the kind of farms that do exist in Torvine are not the kind of huge agro-industrial complexes you find in East Anglia. They are really quite, in many cases, often quite marginal businesses. So I welcome the sense that Councillor Cunningham is suggesting that we should be looking for the results of this national debate, I think that's interesting. But nonetheless, I think full marks to Councillor Bevan for bringing this, raising the issue. I think it is, for some, albeit a small number of residents, it is a genuine concern.
Thank you. Stuart Ashley.
Thanks for raising that, Councillor Bevan. I would also point out the 44 allotments that we've got also have to remove their any fly tipping that happens on them, because it does happen fairly regularly on allotments. So we have to make our own arrangements. So it is land, any form, and I've seen it with social landlords' properties in my own ward as well. So, thanks for bringing it up, but I await for that trial as well, from that point of view.
Thank you, Stu. Anybody else?
Yeah, can I just
and then
I've seconded the motion of John Cunningham's. I mean, we sympathise with the position they're in, and you must do that. It's a very problematic issue, and it's a big issue, and it needs sort of national legislation or national discussion on it. Because, like Stuart said, it doesn't only apply to farmers, it applies to companies, it applies to people that got land surrounding their companies. I mean, it sounds wrong that if somebody tips waste there, you've got to pay to get it off your land. But anyway, I think it requires a national debate.
Right. Let me just come in there. We got a motion of Councillor Bevan. No, we haven't had amendment.
Just for and against, I think, didn't it?
No. Hold on, we didn't have amendment.
It's a for and against, I think, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome the comments from Councillor Cunningham that it is something that is being looked at, and also it's nice to hear that other county borough councils are looking to implement a policy whereby the farmers could have a free permit, so they don't have to incur costs. I'm just saying, with that in mind, would the council here be minded to adopt a similar policy here within Torvine prior to the national consultation? Is that something that might be considered as a kind of a preemptive strike, or is, as the leader, minded to wait until we get that national consultation?
No, I think we need really to wait for that local authority who are trialling at this moment in time. And I'm not sure whether, in order to change that, we'd need to, and I'll look to Christine for this, whether we'd need to change primary legislation to be able to do that. Would we?
Right.
I mean, it's a difficult one, Hugh, but I can't see us at this moment in time doing that trial. We'll await the outcome of the other local authority, and then we see where we go from there. Because it does have consequences, of course. You must appreciate that with other landowners or registered social landlords.
Right, so let's go revert back to the motion then. It's Councillor Bevan's motion. Are we going to show of hands? For. Against? Okay. Anyone abstaining? No. Thank you, members. Motion carried. Lost. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Where are we going now?
Second motion. Councillor Bevan's second motion.
Could I just ask to have a copy of the response in writing, please? Thank you.
Councillor Bevan, can you move your second motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on the scrutiny committee, a number of scrutiny committees, and we had a very interesting presentation as part of the scrutiny around the adoption of an integrated transport unit that Newport Borough Council have implemented, and it's actually translated to real-term cost savings to Newport of approximately £1.2 million per annum. And I know we can't do a direct comparison between the transportation demands within Newport and Torvine. However, it's highlighted an issue where I feel there is an opportunity for us to generate significant cost savings going forward by adopting a holistic approach rather than having everything compartmentalised. I'm sure other members were on that committee would be very much aware of this. So again, to keep it brief, I propose that TCBC adopt an integrated transport unit encompassing highways and transportation, education, social services and fleet management, as this approach has been shown to deliver significant cost savings when this was adopted in Newport Borough Council.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Will you go second at that? Thank you. John?
No, I think that Councillor Bevan is absolutely right on this, but of course we can't compare apples with apples, because I was sat in the scrutiny committee and I was very interested in what Newport did. But of course, we're in a different ballgame than Newport altogether, because our transport within Torvine is totally fragmented, where social services do their own thing, education do their own thing, environment do their own thing. So we need to get that together first of all. But I do sympathise, and that's something we've been talking about within Torvine for a long time. But if I could respond to the motion, at the end of it I will want to put an amendment which you may agree to. But in responding to it, I think we have to consider the transport function of this authority. In response to your motion, it can be split into two distinct areas, passenger transport and fleet. If I could deal with the passenger transport first. Passenger transportation is currently arranged by a joint passenger transport unit encompassing Blaenau Gwent and Torvine County Borough Council. This arrangement was put in place to ensure economies of scale in the provision of passenger transport. Whilst the authority is part of this agreement, discussions have been ongoing as to the appropriateness of maintaining the relationship. And with this in mind, other local authorities have been approached to determine whether there is any desire to share services related to passenger transport provision. It has to be noted that as Torvine County Borough Council has a formal agreement with Blaenau Gwent County Borough Council, there could be financial or staff consequences of TCBC withdrawing from the agreement. We've obtained a cost estimate for the provision of a business case for this work and have been provided with a price of £10,000. This work has been held in abeyance for the past 6 months due to the likelihood of regional work being undertaken. Of note now is that the Williams Commission is shortly to report on its findings related to the public sector governance, and delivery of this may report that some local authorities should merge. As such, it seems appropriate to delay any further work on this nature until the findings of this report are known. Under the fleet management heading, in 2012 a fleet management strategy was developed setting out our vision to provide a safe, sustainable, reliable and cost-effective vehicle fleet which meets the need of our internal and external customers and enables Torvine County Borough Council to deliver efficient, high-quality services. The strategy was developed in collaboration with key stakeholders from across this council, including all service area, sustainability, insurance, finance, etc., to ensure that it encompasses the requirement of our broad range of internal and external customers. It set out to describe our approach to achieving this vision over the next 3 years. the challenges we are faced with, the priorities we will focus on, and the action that will be taken and our measures of success. It provides direction and sets priorities, but at the same time allows for adjustment as circumstances change. It broadly covers services such as vehicle and plant procurement, vehicle servicing, maintenance and repair, vehicle plant replacement or disposal, and effective vehicle utilisation. The appendices of the strategy provide comprehensive detail of all those services and functions. It is felt that there are efficiencies and savings that can be made through the proper and full implementation of the Council's fleet strategy. It should be noted that the Authority's Senior Management Task Force, reporting to the Corporate Leadership Team, are currently drafting a pro forma to allow consideration of an Authority-wide transport project. In considering the response to the motion, the following is suggested as a response and an appropriate way to consider the future of the provision of the Authority's transport function. And my amendment is, and hopefully Councillor Bevan may agree with this, the Torfaen County Borough Council seek to combine all fleet management functions into one unit as part of the emerging medium-term financial plan, and following the outcomes of the Williams Review, an assessment of the existing joint passenger transport unit between the Council, Blaenau Gwent County Borough Council, is undertaken to determine if it is still appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham.
Mr Mayor, thank you, Councillor Cunningham, for that response. Yes, I would be happy to accept that amendment. So thank you very much for proposing that.
Right, John, we need a second for your amendment.
Then I become the motion now?
Stuart Ashley, right on it.
He's withdrawn it, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You vote on the amendment then. Show of hands. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstaining? No, thank you. No, everybody.
So we've got to vote on the...
Right, all right. I'll vote again then on the
motion as amended.
Motion as amended. Show of hands. Yeah. Okay.
Against.
Against? Abstaining? No, nobody. Thank you. Maybe no. Councillor Rees, eh?
No. No.
This one, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, there, Councillor Bevan.
Thank you again, Mr Mayor. Since I proposed this motion, events have moved on, and Peter Durkin, the Deputy Chief Exec, has written a letter on behalf of Torfaen County Borough Council representing my views and also the views of quite a number of other elected members. So this matter has actually been addressed now, so I wish to withdraw this third motion on the auxiliary fire engine, please. Thank you.
Sorry, just to add to that, the Chief Fire Officer will be coming to a scrutiny committee to discuss the issue in January, I believe. So.
Thank you. Councillor Rees.
Diolch, Mayor. Just before I start, I want to congratulate all the members that have stayed to the end of the meeting today. It is the usual faces I see in other council meetings up here, so well done, everybody. Keep going right to the end.
You only said that because we were all going now.
Okay. Right, so I'll start out with my motion. This council notes the outstanding contribution that the Wales Gurkha community based in Cwmbran makes to our society. Also recognises for the last 2 centuries the Gurkhas have sacrificed themselves and will continue to do so in the British Army service. Further, this council is appalled at the way the ex-Gurkha soldiers have been treated by the British government and will submit evidence to the all-party parliamentary group on Gurkha welfare at the earliest opportunity, calling it to resolve the plight of ex-Gurkha soldiers and their families and for them to be treated on an equal basis with other British military personnel.
Thank you, Jeff. Is that motion seconded, Jeff? Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Leader, I'd like to come in there.
Yes, I want to just support Councillor Jeffries with his comments, because the Gurkhas, certainly in Cwmbran, have developed a real rapport both with the community councils and with the borough councils. And I noticed that on all their occasions now, you'll see half a dozen or a dozen members present. We welcome them into Cwmbran. They're lovely people. I think they've settled there. They consider themselves to be Cwmbran people, and I say again, we welcome them.
Daniels?
Firstly, I'd like to commend Jeff on this fantastic motion. I know he's been an incredibly active supporter of the Gurkha community and equality, so I couldn't think of anyone better to propose it, really. Lantarnam, it's got within it a small community of ex-Gurkha Nepalese residents who over the years have become quite a valued part of our community. Through public events such as their annual Open Day and the Dashain and Diwali celebrations, they've invited the community around them in to celebrate and experience Nepalese culture. So I think they're a tremendous example of what it means to embrace and be embraced by their adopted community. So it's for that reason, and in addition to Jeff's excellent reason, that I firmly believe in equality for the Gurkhas, and I urge other members to support this motion.
Yeah. Richard?
I too commend Councillor Rees for bringing this motion to Council, and would have happily seconded if I hadn't been beaten at the post. And I associate myself with the other comments thus far said. I agree that it is right that this Council should note the outstanding contribution and sacrifices that have been made by Gurkha veterans and their families over the past 2 centuries. It was especially poignant for me to see Gurkhas join in the Remembrance Parade in Cwmbran, to the delight and the respect of the veteran organisations that were present. I welcome the opportunity for this Council to contribute evidence to the recently announced all-party inquiry into the provisions for Gurkha ex-service people and their families. I've recently asked Vincent James, the Council's Equality Manager, to set up a meeting for me with the President of the Gurkha community and others, other representatives, and I have been advised that that should be Thursday morning, subject to a location. And at that, I hope to learn more about the Nepalese communities living and working in Torvine, undertaking my role, obviously, as equalities champion. I would also very much welcome Councillor Rees's input and support in submitting evidence to the inquiry garnered from his very strong links with the Nepalese communities. I'm sure it can only add to anything that this Council submits.
Thank you, Richard. Maria?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to support Jeff's motion. I have spent much time with the local Gurkhas community, especially in my ward, and I know how proud they are of their contribution to the British society and their own tradition and culture. I support the proposal to pay tribute to the Gurkha community in recognition of their proud history and their contribution to Torvine. I have recently also attended a number of events with the Gurkhas community at Aoki level and support their strong claims to be treated on an equal basis with other British military personnel. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Stuart Ashley?
I'd like to associate with Jeff's motion. We were very familiar for a number of years in Pontnewid, as we used to have a considerable number of them marching with us at the annual parade. One of my neighbours, where I live in Pontnewid, actually was the gentleman that took the British Army to court over the original issue, and a very courageous gentleman he was to do it, and he secured the first issue on that. So I actually know about that issue to start with. It was quite a number of years ago on that. So that complete issue about equal parity with British servicemen, I didn't realise it was still going on. I thought they'd actually achieved that. But I support that wholeheartedly on that issue, because equal parity on that is certainly an important issue. I totally agree with the issue on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. Jeffries?
With your permission, Mayor, then I'll just sum up the debate if everybody's okay with that. Colleagues, last month an ex-Gurkha soldier, Mr Ganraj Rai, went on hunger strike outside the residence of the British Prime Minister as a last resort, calling for ex-Gurkhas to be treated equally with other former British military personnel. This after years of campaigning for their cause, and which was largely ignored by the British government. On day 11 of his hunger strike, I and Councillor Graham, along with ex-Gurkhas resident in Torvine, there are about 75 families here altogether, went to visit Mr Ganraj Rai, who was on hunger strike, camped outside under the statue of Montgomery. A fact that I noticed when we went there and we were with the ex-Gurkhas greeting Mr Ganraj Rai was that they were saying goodbye to him, as they knew he had sworn to die if the British refused again to negotiate with them. That's why I wrote this motion. It had a massive personal impact on me when I recognised the fact that he was ready to die. And when you meet someone like that, it's a wake-up call. I'm proud to say, as a Plaid Cymru councillor, the Plaid Cymru MPs immediately put in an early day motion in the British Parliament calling on the British government to enter into negotiations. This was part of an effort of a campaign, including many others, that resulted in the British government agreeing for an inquiry to be set up into this matter by the all-party parliamentary group on Gurkha welfare. That will report in March 2014. And then Mr Ganraj Rai stopped his hunger strike. Colleagues, the Gurkhas, all the Gurkhas want is equality. And here's just a few examples of the things they should be getting. Serving Gurkhas are being charged the same national insurance as British soldiers for benefits they will not receive, e.g. British basic state pension. After 17 years of service, a British soldier's pension is at least double that of a Gurkha's. And after 22 years' service, it's more than triple. That's just wrong. And these figures I've got from the Centre for Nepalese Studies. Now I believe that the progressive amongst us, and those are still here, most of us, will vote in favour of this motion because of the equality issue. Others may be persuaded by the positive impact on the local economy and that more money entering into it will bring. For me, voting for this motion will show solidarity with this important group within our community for this struggle, to show our solidarity with them. It's the least we can do. And I'm calling for a recorded vote so that they can see for themselves that each individual councillor in Torvine supports them. I move the motion. I'm calling for a recorded vote.
Thank you.
Can I ask, Mr Mayor, that we send a copy of our sort of motion to the two MPs for this area, Councillor Paul Murphy and Councillor David Davis, and ask them also to give their support?
Thank you. Right, you mentioned a recorded vote. Show of hands. A recorded vote is enough anyway. All right, put your hands down. Hold on. Right, leave it here, Rich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Members, please can you say clearly and use your microphone whether you're for, against or abstaining from the motion. Councillor Ashley. For. Councillor Barnett.
For.
Councillor Bevan.
For.
Councillor Brooks.
For.
Councillor Cameron, sorry, is not here. Councillor Karen. For. Councillor Richard Clark. For. Councillor Cross, not here, sorry. Councillor Cunningham.
For.
Councillor Daniels. For. Councillor Graham. For. Councillor Harnett. For. Councillor Hunt. For. Councillor Jeremiah. For. Councillor Lewis-Jones. For. Councillor Kemp. For. Councillor Marshall.
For.
Councillor Mason.
For.
Councillor Morby.
For.
Councillor Mills. Sorry, not here. Councillor Owen.
For.
Councillor Parish.
For.
Councillor Rees. For. Councillor Seaborn.
For.
Councillor Smith. For. Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
Councillor Tomlinson. For. Councillor Wellington. For. Councillor Yule.
For.
Mr Mayor, that's everybody in the chamber has voted in favour.
Thank you very much. Well done, everybody. Move on. Agenda item 19, members' question time. There are 7 members' questions for today. The questions are shown on the sheet circulated. Councillor Hugh Bevan.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor. Shelter issued a report which highlighted some alarming numbers about the numbers of homeless families living in bed and breakfast accommodation, but also beyond the 6-week statutory period, and published numbers in the UK. So this is what's really prompted the question. Over 2,000 homeless families are living in bed and breakfasts, an increase of 8% from 2012, according to government figures. Shelter has warned that children's health can suffer living in such accommodation, which is meant to be only temporary. At the end of June, 790 families had been living in bed and breakfasts for longer than the 6-week legal limit. Can the executive member please advise how many families there are within Torfaen that are in temporary bed and breakfast accommodation, and whether any have been there for longer than the 6-week legal limit? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Richard Clark, can you come in there, please?
Answering on behalf of Councillor Gwynair Clark, I have to say that during the period April 2012 to March 2013, only 4 households with children were placed in bed and breakfast accommodation as an emergency rehousing being required. The maximum time any of these families stayed in bed and breakfast was 5 days before they were moved on into alternative temporary accommodation. Torfaen only used 2 bed and breakfast establishments on a regular basis, but have had no families in bed and breakfast for over 6 weeks during the past year. The Housing Option Team lease a range of units of accommodation throughout Torfaen to use as temporary accommodation to prevent the use of bed and breakfast. The team continue to focus their efforts and resources on the prevention of homelessness and the provision of services that help mitigate the impact of welfare benefit reforms. This emphasis has resulted in the team advocating and liaising on behalf of customers with landlords, mortgage providers, family members and external agencies, all helping to sustain families in their own homes wherever possible. Gwynair Clark, the Executive Member for Housing, Planning and Public Protection, has visited the bed and breakfast establishments to inspect the accommodation and meet the landlords. The B&B establishments that we use for emergencies were found to be in good conditions, and the landlords work well with the local authority and also provide support to applicants during their stay even. However, if I were to be political on this issue, I would note his question shows the realities of living under a Westminster Conservative government and would suggest he raises the issues with his political friends in Westminster, who have ideologically chosen to persecute those on benefits, and according to recent Joseph Rowntree Foundation report, Joseph Rowntree report overseen 13 million people living below the poverty line, with over 50% of those working families and not the demonised, Westminster demonised welfare recipients.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Clark for at least the first half of his answer. I was very pleased to hear that we haven't had any instances of this within Torfaen. I'd like him to respond in writing, please, if he could. I will use some of the answer to pass on correspondence. I have tried not to, take advantage of the fact that because these council meetings are now being webcast, to indulge in political point scoring, and sadly I was disappointed that Richard resorted to that. I could say in response about the funding, our MP for Monmouthshire, David Davis, has actually written to Jane Hutt, the Assembly Member and Minister of Finance in Cardiff Bay, regarding the capital allocation, funding that comes from the UK
Councillor
central
Bevan.
government to the Welsh
Councillor
Assembly.
Bevan. Excuse me. Is this a question?
No, it's the cash allocation has actually gone up in real terms, but Jane Hutt's arguing it's been eroded by inflation. But I'm sorry, I strayed into the realm of the politics. But no, if Richard could provide the written answer, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Richard?
Chair, I'll happily do that. Apologies as a county councillor for straying into politics. I really thought that's why I was sat here. I do note it isn't grandstanding on my part. It's the realities of what real families are facing in this county borough. And yes, if it is being recorded and seen, I hope that it was noted that the leader of the Conservative group was laughing during my remarks about homeless, poor, hard-pressed families in this community. And if that's political, I make no apology for it.
Right, all right. Let's move on. Mary, do you want to withdraw?
I don't want to withdraw the question. I would like it printed in the council papers with the note that the question was not asked as answered had been provided during an earlier agenda item. But I would like it to be there because of the remarks about Peter.
No problem. Thank you. The leader's not here. Where did he come? Yeah,
Mr. Mayor,
go on.
the leader asked me to ask you to proceed with the other questions and you come back to those when he comes in. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Right, all right. Councillor Graham? Oh, you're the leader now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to the executive member for children and young people. Is the reason why Lantanam School has been potentially chosen for closure rather than Fairwater High School because the Lantanam site is more suited to having an ultravine post-16 provision move there afterwards? Thank you very much.
Councillor Morby?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Maria. No. The overriding reason for the current proposal, which highlights the Fairwater site as the site for the newly formed school, is the one given in the Cabinet report, i.e. it is more at the centre of the learner population than the Lantanum site in this area of Torvine. With a process to follow to determine the future of the two schools in question, and there are no alternative plans in place for the Lantanum site at this time.
Thank you, Brian. Maria, do you got a supplementary? Thank you. We move on. Jeff Reeson.
Diolch fawr. A fydd yr wainydd yn y cymryd y cyfflu hwn I ddiw eddi ar un cyngor am ffactorion am ynghwaid ac achos llys uwch swyddog mewn perthynas a gweithgareddau honedig yn ei SRS.
Right, can I bring in Alan here to translate that, please?
Yeah, this is a translation of Councillor Rees's question. Will the leader take this opportunity to update the Council about the matters pertaining to the potential trial of a senior officer in relation to the alleged activities at the SRS?
Thank you, Jeff. We agreed earlier on that we would have a report on the business solutions of SRS, and that's coming to us in January. I think that would be the appropriate time to do this.
If I can help members here, obviously the question relates to active proceedings and it would not be appropriate to have any comment on that while they're ongoing because it's sub judice.
Jeff?
Thank you for that, Alpha. Just if I understand correctly, so the SRS public will be included in the report which is coming in January, yeah? Yeah, thank you.
Jeff, have you got a supplementary there? That was it with it. Bevan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the leader advise why Torvine has not signed up to paying council employees and contractors on low incomes the living wage rather than the minimum wage?
This is Councillor Anthony Hunt's territory, and I'll let Anthony answer this one.
Me. Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. I welcome Councillor Bevan's concern for those on lower wages. I won't get too political after previous exchanges, but I'd like to remind him, in the spirit of Christmas, that I'm more than happy to provide him with a membership form for Christmas, wrapped and ready, and if he fancies a change of colour. Our budget development process includes regular meetings with trade unions to ensure that we keep each other up to date on the pressures we face and the aspirations we hold in arriving at a budget that properly balances value for money for our residents and rewarding employment for our workforce. In the meetings we have held throughout 2013, our trade unions have consistently pressed for the introduction of the living wage in Torfaen. I share this aspiration and have told them so. I know they are disappointed that the Cabinet has not been able to recommend the introduction of the living wage for our employees in the next financial year. I also know that the trade unions respect the Cabinet's view that, in view of the unprecedented financial challenge councils are facing, the introduction of the living wage is unsustainable next year if we are also going to 1. Honour the protection required for schools funding, 2. Continue our commitment to the vulnerable by not imposing a 4% reduction on our social care budgets, 3. Implement a set of mitigation measures which, whilst being difficult, try to avoid shutting services and provision completely and avoid job losses, and 4. Make no further reduction in waste spending and offset the loss of grant in this area. These are the reasons why we cannot pay the living wage next year. Whilst our trade unions are disappointed with the Cabinet's view, I know they appreciate that Torfaen was amongst the first local authorities to put up the money necessary to introduce equal pay, has made and honoured a commitment to avoid compulsory redundancy over the past 3 years, is developing the Profile programme that will bring an even more systematic approach to minimising and hopefully avoiding compulsory redundancy next year, and in the new year there will be a seminar for members to explain more about Profile, which I think is a real sort of developing sort of bow to our arrow in that respect. The Council is also predicting significantly fewer job losses than many of its neighbours. We've accepted that council tax freeze is unsustainable in the financial climate we face without decimation of jobs and local services, and we're working to be open and transparent with our trade unions and our workforce in developing our budget together.
Thank you, Anthony. Councillor Bevan, you got a supplementary?
No, thank you. I'd just like to thank the Councillor for his reply.
I'm happy to put that in writing as well.
Thank you very much, both of you. Jeff Rees.
Diolch Mawr. This is for the leader. Sir Merrick Cockell, chairman of the Local Government Association, recently said, "The Bonnet formula has passed its use-by date. It's an historic relic from a time when the government stopped people taking more than £50 on holiday abroad. What was only ever intended as a stopgap solution has now become a major problem, which is shortchanging English communities and underfunding their public services by £4.1 billion a year. We now need a fair and equitable distribution of public money across the Union." End quote. Does the leader agree with him?
Again, this question should be answered by Anthony Hunt. I did remind members at the last council meeting that Anthony Hunt is now the deputy spokesperson for the WLGA, and I suspect is more briefed on it than I am.
Okay. The Bonnet formula has been around for a long time, and there's been much commentary about whether or not it should be reviewed. It's important to note that your quote comes from the Conservative chair of the LGA in England, so not from someone exactly begging to give Wales more money. What the leader and other councillors would wish to see from any review is that it ensures our funding coming to Wales properly reflects the needs of our communities and results in an appropriate level of funding for Wales that protects essential public services. The WLGA evidence presented to the Silk Commission confirms this view, and I quote from it: "The WLGA believes that any devolution of taxation powers to the National Assembly for Wales should be accompanied by a reform of the current block grant funding arrangements, i.e. the Barnett formula, to ensure that the financing of all governments within the United Kingdom is fair and seen to be fair and based on relative needs."
Thank you, Anthony. Supplementary.
Thank you for that answer. Seems I'm getting 2 for the price of 1, which you'll see from my supplementary. The Holton Commission has reported that Wales is significantly underfunded, which I think you agree with, through the Barnett formula. And the reason I asked the leader is because he's also the leader of the Wales Local Government Association, so I was specifically looking for his support and influence on that. And now I've got Anthony as well, that's 2 for the price of 1. What I'm asking is, will you use your influences to ensure that the Welsh Local Government Association asks all the parties in Wales to include the replacement of Barnett formula with a needs-based formula in their 2015 manifestos, as this will benefit the people of Torfaen and Wales.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. Leader, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, these are ongoing discussions that's taking place, and this is constantly being updated. And if necessary, I'll bring a report back to the next council, or I'll write to you on it.
Okay with that, Councillor Rees? Anthony, do you want to say anything? No. Right away. You, Bevan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you kindly please advise whether Torfaen County Borough Council has taken part in the ongoing consultation process with Bronavon over their rent review for tenants, and if so, what were the recommendations? And that was for Councillor Gwynaira Clark, Executive Member for Housing, Planning and Public Protection, but as she's not here, I guess that will be probably fielded by Councillor Clark.
Richard, can you come in here?
I can indeed, and I can reassure you there won't be a political answer to this. And similarly, I do have to caveat this with that I am answering it for Councillor Gwynaira Clark, because, as some of you know, I am a member of the Bronavon board. So, whilst there's not a conflict, I do want to make it clear that it's Gwynaira's answer. So, on her behalf, I can confirm that the Council have engaged in Bronavon's recent rent policy review as part of their consultation process. The feedback the Council has provided includes the need to be mindful of the commitment made to tenants in the offer document prior to stock transfer, and that any resultant rent rationalisation should not result in an increase in total rental income. In addition, there is a need to be mindful of the wider housing market rent levels and suggest that consideration be given to the size and type of property, as well as the need for consistency in equity in rent setting even. Ultimately, it will be for the Board of Bronavon to determine the outcome of the review, hence my caveat.
Thank you, Rich. Supplementary here?
No supplementary, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 20, date of the next meeting. For your information, members, the next council meeting will be held on Tuesday, 28th of January 2014. Here at the council chamber. Agenda item 21, cabinet decisions. Members, the cabinet decisions are listed on the agenda for information as usual. There were no challenges to the decisions. Do members have any questions or any discussions? No. Is everyone happy to note the decisions? Yes. Thank you, members. The cabinet decisions are noted. This is the end of the meeting, and I wish you all a happy Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Enjoy yourself. Thank you very much.